Hello, everyone. Welcome to the New Companions, an Elder Scrolls Online podcast that is broadcasted every 2 weeks live on Twitch. Also goes out to iTunes and all the things, Spotify and everywhere else. So no matter where you're listening or you're watching, welcome to the cast. Today we are talking about Cyrodiil. We are talking about Cyrodiil with some awesome guests as well. We have Ruben. We have RubenSky.
Hello?
RubenSky. Wow, I'm just gonna say it the wrong way. I didn't say Sky. Someone told me off.
People remember it for Twitch. That's all that matters.
Excellent. We got Lord Zele. And we have Gand the Impaler. I'm just going to start off with Ruben very, very quickly. And we are talking about Cyrodiil in its entirety today. It's going to be very general conversation. This is really our first proper podcast focused on one specific area of PvP, I suppose. And even then, it's quite big because it's Cyrodiil. Ruben, what do you do? Because not everyone will know what everyone does on each podcast, but what do you do mainly in the game? What do you YouTube as well? Do you Twitch, or what do you do?
Well, I used to primarily focus on PvP. Like 95% of my content was PvP. Mm-hmm. I always said PvE was like going to the dentist. You don't want to, but you have to, for the gear and stuff. But nowadays, I have been doing pretty much all of it, like PvE much more, because PvP isn't just as enjoyable anymore for me as it used to be.
Okay. Oh, we can talk about that today. Lord Zele, what do you get up to mainly in the game?
All I really do is PvP. Got about 6,000 hours in this game, and honestly, probably about like 5,700 are straight PvP. I've played on Magicka and Stam of every class in Cyrodiil for extensive hours besides the Necro. But all I really do, I just go into Cyrodiil and I just PvP pretty much 24/7. But other than that, make videos. It's on YouTube under Lord Zele as well, and I do live stream as well. But that's all I stream, all I make content for is just PvP. That's all I've ever really done in this game.
So we got
specifically small scale.
Ah, right, okay. And that's going to be great for when we talk about that later as well. And then we have Gand the Impaler.
Impaler.
That I have spelled in a... Have I spelled that wrong? I think I've spelled that wrong, haven't I?
There is no Y.
There is no Y. I was just like, he's paying... Who is he paying right now? I mean, what is that about?
It makes it sound exotic.
I think every week I spell one person's name wrong. And it's like... Do you prefer Impaler? Or
I don't mind.
You don't mind? I'll get rid of it. I'll change it. So what do you do?
I pay people. But
exploit it.
I PvP a lot. I do pretty much everything in the game now because I play it more casually than I ever have with work and stuff. But primarily, my interest is still mostly in and small scale and just Zerg surfing around Cyrodiil. So big groups, I'll just jump around and kill whoever I can on the side of it. And I dip my toes in trials, so to speak, and then mostly dungeons with friends all the time.
Okay,
so everywhere.
Kind of everywhere, kind of doing all the things. So these guys are all pretty experienced in the game mode. And actually, funnily enough, I'm probably the one who's the least experienced, in all honesty. I mean, I've probably been playing the game the least amount of time, but I've had a lot of experience PvP-wise in Guild Wars 2, Dark Age of Camelot, Warhammer Online, Crowfall coming up in the future, and just tons of RVR. Like, I know it. I fell in love with it years ago, even from like Planet Side 1 days. So it's like I've got a lot of experience in the general area of PvP. And the PvP, I shoutcasted PvP for years, like professionally. So it's something I'm very, very obviously is it's in my heart, it's in my soul. But yeah, we are having a very general conversation about Cyrodiil today. And where I wanted to quickly start off with, because there are probably people who are listening for the first time, and they're like, I don't really know much about Cyrodiil. Like, what is it? What happens? We don't need to explain exactly what Cyrodiil is, because that could take all day. But I just wanted to know from each of you. I'm going to start with Ruben. very quickly on the first point I've kind of got. How new player, and this is going to go to all of you guys. I mean, and you can kind of jump in every so often, and if we've covered it, we'll just move on. How new player friendly do you think Cyrodiil actually is? And that's a very open question. Do you think if you're a new player to ESO, you know, you're level 10, you want to go in, you press L, is it even that easy to even press L? You know, do you know what I mean? I don't know.
I don't think it's any more that new friendly because due to how Cyrodiil plays, the most people that are left now in Cyrodiil, in my opinion, are the very hardcore people, so the very experienced people, and also in low-level PvP, people like to go in there and really like try hard. So you have like level 20, level 30 people there who are running around with gold gear, exactly know what to do. And then if you come in there as a level 10, you probably have some shitty skills, bad gear, no good trades. You're gonna like instant kills. I think it used to be really noob friendly back in the day, but back then everyone was also like noob in 2014, 15, and then it's slightly everyone became more experienced.
That's fair enough to say. Zele and Gand, is there anything you wanna add to that? Is there?
Yeah, I agree with what Ruben said. Even the low 50 or the below 50 campaign that was, it was Blackwater Blade back then, and they renamed it. But the whole idea of it was for players that weren't at the level cap, had a free place to go around in PvP instead of fighting these max level characters that have these monster sets and all of that. So if you're like a level 30, you're running around fighting against players that do have all this gold gear, that have all the right traits already at max level, it was already kind of rough for you. And below 50, we don't have monster sets, but like what Ruben was saying, we do have those people. We kind of call them twink builds. They run around on lobbies, but they do have all gold gear. They have gold weapons. They have like straight hardcore gear set up for them. And when they out level, they just delete their character and redo it again. I think Cyrodiil can still be noob friendly, but don't go in there by yourself expecting to get lots of work done if you're really new to the game. I don't want to encourage like large scale necessarily, but find yourself a group of friends to play with and eventually just learn the game together, because if Cyrodiil is rough for you, PvE is probably still a little bit rough for you as well, because it's very mechanically strong, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. Some of the players you run into, like, they just have standard mechanics, decent builds, and they get work done because of the mechanics. So it's all about mechanics. So if you're really new to the game in general, Cyrodiil's still going to be a little rough. Down the line, it'll still be rough for even like more intermediate players. But for beginners, just find yourself a group of friends and just try to have fun. Don't worry about getting good right off the back. You will run into people that will literally destroy you, and they will derail your motivation. But honestly, just keep playing. There's always someone out there that's going to be better than you.
Fair points. Gand, anything you want to add? Pretty much
covered? I don't think so. Yeah. Pretty much covered. Yeah, no, these guys are not wrong at all.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's interesting about the under 50 campaign though. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, people do it in BGs as well, like that.
Yeah, but is that because of MMR though, and they can never get Q pop? I don't know. I mean,
I think they just enjoy just stomping over everybody. That's it.
I guess that's kind of the same in a ton of games. Actually, Kickstarter made a good question in chat. Would you guys say it's best to gain experience for PvPing in Cyrodiil or Battlegrounds? Battlegrounds is probably better to train in, isn't it? Because you get that instant kind of action where you can.
Yeah, I'd do grinding Battlegrounds before Cyrodiil for sure.
But it play like totally different. Like Battlegrounds, you have a lot more line of sighting in general, and in Cyrodiil it's like all open field. So I mean, you do have rocks and trees here and then, but overall, and the situations are very different. Battlegrounds max is 4-4-4. Cyrodiil, you can be one moment in a 1 versus 3, then you can be 10 versus 5. You know, that's what I personally also love about Cyrodiil. It's like the variety. Like every fight can be different.
Blind Seth, I mean, I don't know if you're being serious or trolling, but like, I mean, just said in chat, I don't even know how to enter Cyrodiil, but no crap, like, I didn't either. Like, I actually didn't. When I started the game off, I was like, I really want to go into this RVR zone campaign, and I want to go in, and I don't know how to do it. I had to look up the keybind. And I think it was just because I think I was before level 10 or whatever when it pops up. But I didn't know at the time, but I think it's a lot easier now, probably. Anyway, after embarrassing myself.
People don't know how to get out either. You see that in the zone chat all the time. How do you get out in Cyrodiil?
Oh my god!
And then everyone is just a fucking troll, man.
They're like press alt F4.
Yeah.
Oh my god! But the thing is, when you log back in,
Go
you're
to
still
the
there.
middle.
It's still there, so you're still screwed.
Oh, man.
Okay. So in Cyrodiil, and again, this is kind of part and parcel of the last question. I'll start with Gand with this. What is the absolute minimum a player should start off with in Cyrodiil? You think, level 10, you could probably jump in, or is it kind of like Zele said, it's like you're just gonna get wrecked? Is it worth like getting, and this goes in part with the next question as well, I'm gonna ask. What do you need to be prepared in for Cyrodiil, even at low level? Like, what would you say is like one key thing you would need to be prepared for it? I know it's a loaded question.
Probably just the attitude. You've got to be ready to get but you have to learn from every time that you lose a fight, right? Too many people like go in, and it is overwhelming because, in my opinion, this touches on other subjects, but like the game doesn't do a great job like when you first start playing to teach you individual mechanics and what you can do, like what your limitations are.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of need to learn that from failure and see like, oh, I can do this. Like, you learn things all the time, right? So I would say probably the biggest or the most important thing is that will to keep going even though you're constantly losing. Like, what are you learning from this fight? That's how you're going to get better. Mm-hmm. But then also just have a build that you're going to be comfortable with doing that. If you're not going to have a build that you enjoy, like even halfway, you're going to hate all of your time because you're just losing and you're not enjoying what you're playing, right? So those are the two most important things. It sounds like super basic, but that's in my opinion what you need.
The basic enjoyment. Zele, what do you reckon?
Yeah.
Honestly, it really is the mindset that you really need.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of something like more in-game specific, I would at least recommend to be, level 15 to at least get 2 bars. If you're fighting out there, at least like in-game wise.
Yeah.
But mindset wise, you really just need to have the mindset, kind of like what I was saying earlier, that you're always going to get into those rough fights. You're always going to get into those outnumbered fights. Honestly, you just got to keep pushing and just keep playing the game. If you enjoy it, you're going to enjoy it in the long run, regardless of what's going on. So, but level-wise, more in-game specific, I would just highly encourage people to at least be level 15, to at least have double bars. Like, if you're going to be getting your butt kicked, might as well have both bars, right? Might as well be getting your butt kicked with like 10 skills, hopefully, if you have 10 skills by then.
Guys, it sounds really basic. It sounds obvious to us, right? But, there's so many people that will be, especially at the moment. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this now as well, other than a great suggestion from a viewer of ours, was that people are getting into the game right now, and this will go out and people will listen to it, and they will watch it, a couple of hundred people at the very least. And it's important that people, especially new players that are experienced in like RVR or whatever, have this kind of information. So it's very useful. Is there anything you want to add, Ruben, at all?
Well, I mean, regarding level, I always like to see level 20 because at level 50 you do unlock your second bar, but if you do level 20, you at least level it a little bit. But I also find it like difficult to give my opinion because I started playing in 2014. Mm-hmm. So even though I jumped into PvP without the worst build ever out there, no one knew what the hell he was doing, and now you really got this player environment where you have all those tryhards. And I can see some people gonna like it when they, get in a 10 versus 1 and actually get their ass whoops. So
yeah. Oh, I know what you mean. It is difficult for. Yeah, I mean, I remember jumping into new games, especially like Guild Wars 2 at the start. I'm going to use it as a reference for myself. Everyone would just run to random keeps and random towers and just hammering the door down. Like, everyone was separated. There wasn't Zergs. There wasn't like Havoc squads. There wasn't a small scale scene or roaming at all. It was just like, go somewhere, do some damage to something. It doesn't matter what build you are. Probably everyone was just, DPS to kind of zerk through everything, to be honest, rather than anything survival based. I think, from my own point of view as well, and adding to what you all said, is that PvP is all about surviving as well. It's, if you can get some kills, that's cool. But if you die, you have to kind of restart everything all over again. And in Cyrodiil, it's very unforgiving, because if you are very far on the other side of the map and you die, you will be repositioned somewhere completely on it back into your home area, where your alliance is. So I think, like, for me,
sorry, yeah.
No, go.
But I think for those kind of players, like if you're new, I always recommend go in a group. Everyone's always complaining about zerging, but if you're in a group of 24 players, you aren't necessarily a zerg, in my opinion. You can just be 24 players with the same objective. It's really when you like stack together in AoEs, that could be zerging. But if you're just 24 players, you say let's go together, take Ash, and everyone's just spread out. That's what I recommend to new players. Because if you then die, you can at least get resurrected, so someone can place a forward camp. It's just so much more forgiving than when you start out and you walk alone and then you die and everyone just walks over your dead corpse. No one cares about you. They do maybe slash dance, and then they keep moving on.
Yeah, just a little bit of a crouch.
Yeah, I agree with Ruben on that same statement. I think, but the only thing that I will say is that I think death in Cyrodiil in general is actually very forgiving.
You think it's very forgiving?
I don't think there's a lot of, I guess, like cons to actually dying besides not being in the fight. If you're across the map and you don't have anywhere to respawn if you do die and the rest of your group is dead, then that's where it's kind of like, I guess you can say, unforgiving, because you got to run all the way back over there.
Yeah.
But if you're in a large group and you're at a key fight, you die, you're just gonna get resurrected and go die again.
Yeah,
and you're not gonna get any debuffs or anything like that if you're dying over and over and over. As long as you keep resin, you come back at like 100%. You don't come back at necessarily 100% like attribute stat wise.
Yeah,
like, because you res with like low stam, low magicka.
Yeah,
and if you're a Templar, they will res you with your full health. But I think it's actually very forgiving. The only thing that people will really complain about dying wise is just having to run back to the objective or to the fight. But other than that, I think death in Cyrodiil is actually pretty forgiving.
Okay.
There's downsides. You don't lose experience, you don't lose weapons, you don't lose anything really. It's just 0 HP, I'm out of the fight, you got a res, bam, right back into it.
I definitely agree, and which is why I was going to continue talking. But when I say unforgiving, I mean if you're just running like a DPS build, for example, and you don't run something like survival, like every single time I run, or I've ever made a PvP build for like Guild Wars 2, because I used to be a big build crafter. It would always be, it's always, you can, doing damage or performing a role, but also self-survival. So, if new players want to jump in there and just go full ham DPS wise, I mean, it's obviously doable if you're running in like a group or whatever, but some kind of survivability. So if you are in that situation when you're so far, across the map, or you're in fights and maybe you can kind of get out and survive and reposition and regroup with people, is always nice. And I actually kind of like the fact that even though sometimes I feel a bit like, I died and I have to respawn over there, it's like, that's kind of my fault. And, it's kind of the way it is. It's okay. Because otherwise you can, and those forward camps are cool. I like those. So yeah, I mean, I can see what you guys are saying as well. Absolutely. Okay. You guys are going to change my mind on a few things, I think. I'm not afraid to say I'm wrong, that's for sure. Okay, so... Okay, I'm just going to go straight on to elsewhere, because the last question is kind of what the... something a little bit to do with the last... I mean... Oh no, I'm going to ask this. In terms of your focus for like generally crafting a build for like Cyrodiil, do you think there's something you should, whether or not it's for a new player or a vet, and that's very difficult because so many classes, there's so many different roles. If you're jumping into Cyrodiil, do you think survival is probably one of the most important things? Do you think damage is the most important things? Tankiness. What's important, especially maybe in different things like in bigger, larger group fights and stuff like that, or if you're sieging, or is it different to PvE? I mean, obviously I know the answer, but just as a question, like, would you go into Cyrodiil with a PvE build?
No.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Because if you don't have impenetrable, for example, you get melted already so fast. And in regards of build, what you would run, like, that totally depends on what kind of playstyle you want to play in Cyrodiil, first of all. You want to be the guy who logs in alone, solo. Then I like to go with a class with high movability then. Like, I really enjoy going on my sorcerer personally, because then if I see that EP Zerk of 30 man who wants to try me, I at least can teleport away, really fast. But for group play or something like that, I like to run something totally different. So that question is really depending on what kind of role you want and what you like to play.
Of course. But you mentioned, I mean, like you said, the port, again, is survivability, right? Getting in and out as fast as you can if you need to run away, even if you're running around.
Well, like, if I'm on like Dragonite or anything like that and I see like the wall EPs are coming, like, I can try to run, but I just see them coming closer and closer and I know I'm dead, And that is when you come back to the unforgiving part, like respawn and run again.
Yeah.
So if I like to, if let's say Almeri Domain and EP are fighting on the other side of the map, and I had to run there all the way with my Dragonite, and like 10 people are going to kill me, I don't want to run back constantly. With my Zerg, with my Sorcerer, I at least have movability that I can like streak a couple of times, and then I can actually get away from that.
Fair play.
I would definitely agree on the mobility part. Like when Swift was a big thing before that got nerfed, mobility became a huge thing. You're literally able to run and drop a Dawnbreaker, kill a few people, and run back out. But on other terms outside of mobility, survivability, that covers a lot of different things. But one thing I will say, survivability can like a lot of max stat sets will help you out with survivability. Anything that adds to your actual overall healing, anything like defensive sets, or even some sustained sets like Bone Pirate, for example. It gives some good amount of regen and gives some good max stam. Sets like that I think are key, especially to newer players, because it gives a good sustain and it gives some max stam that actually adds to your tooltips. If people don't know that, the higher max stam you have still adds to tooltips. It's not just about weapon damage or spell damage. But so the point that I'm trying to make is that if you don't have a good general idea of a build to run in, what I always highly encourage is get one damage set, but get a damage set that adds flat stats. So outside of stuff like automaton, like ward mating, for example, those add to specific areas of damage. But if you're adding something like even Huntings or Julianos, for example, they give you a flat stat. That gets added to your healing as well. The higher healing you have, the more survivability you're going to have. So on my Stamplar, for example, I try to always run around with like 6k plus weapon damage. I am deep into weapon damage. But because of how much weapon damage I have, my healing from my vigor is really, really strong. So I'm able to put out big damage and I'm able to survive because I'm able to line of sight, get strong vigor ticks, and still have my rally up. So if you build for good max like stats versus like proc sets, for example, like Calurions, etc., I think overall your experience is going to be better. With Calurions, yeah, you're going to have the insta damage. It's going to be nice, but in the long run, you want your extra max stat. You want to have stronger healing. You want to have stronger bursts, and that's where all that stuff comes from. Like Ravager Briarheart, for example, and Burning Spellweave, sets like that. Magicka, they usually stack more max Magicka versus the spell damage because it's kind of hard to do it on, or stacking spell damage versus weapon damage.
Right.
But sets like that. So I highly encourage a set that improves actual stat, and then getting a defensive set like Fortified Brass, Impreg, anything like that while you're learning your class, or even a sustained set or a max stat set. So something like Hulking, the new craft that just came out, anything like that, a Necro, anything that gives you a higher resource pool.
Yeah.
Or anything flat stat, like stuff like Spinners isn't going to add to your healing. So everything like that will all cover survivability because your heals will be stronger. You have a bigger pool to work with. It's just in the long run, it's going to help you out a lot more.
Yeah, it's all about resource management. That's just
Yeah.
ESO as well, really, I guess. And especially
Mhm.
PvP, it's like if you haven't got resources, you're dead. Even if you got high
Yep.
HP, if you got full health, you ain't got resources, you're done. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
Okay, Gand, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, that's pretty much what I would have said too. It's just max stats will round out your build better than anything else, like for per line type of thing. Like it's just very dense in what it gives you compared to just like for example, like the example of automatons was very good. Like it looks strong and it is strong for what it does, but it doesn't affect everything else. So no, I completely agree with what he said.
Nice. Okay. Do you want to add something?
No, one thing. I think that's
I
it.
think Zele was gonna. He went.
If you do favor sets like Auto and War Maiden, anything that is like specific to physical damage or like that doesn't say it gives you flat spell damage. So anything that's like subcategorized, like poison, flame, anything like that. If you do want to use anything like that, it's still fine. Just I would highly recommend using like a max stat set or another damage set, because I used to run Ravager and Auto a long time ago. Ravager was giving me big heals and Auto was giving me the consistent high damage. But I ended up actually switching Auto out for something like Huntings, because the 5-piece of Huntings, like for example, it scales with minor brutality, scales with major, scales with continuous attack, and it just gets bigger and bigger. So eventually Huntings down the line actually helped me a lot. But versus Auto, because it adds to my healing. But I'm just saying, like, if you do want to use a set like that, at least get another max stat set versus like a defensive set. At least your healing.
You're gonna have to make up for it elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because you're gonna lose a lot of healing from running Auto versus Huntings, for example.
Cool. Okay, I love it. Good information. Really good. Even good information for me. You know. Okay, and talking about Gand brings up elsewhere. What a good segue.
I didn't want to make the joke. I was like,
sorry,
no.
that's my job. That's my job. I'm gonna make the bad jokes here.
Thanks for the podcast. Goodbye.
Damn it. We were talking about this before. Ruben's gonna be the first one who just rage quits. That's never happened before. Okay, so and there's some interesting questions coming up in a bit, but specifically, obviously, Elsewhere brought and is bringing to console, in case you're listening to this before June 4th, a couple of different changes. And I don't know if actually this is coming out on... I don't know if this is out on console now, these changes, or if it's actually coming out with Elsewhere. I'm not too sure myself because I don't play console. And I haven't looked into it. But there's a few things that happened. Obviously, we have artifact weapons now. The removal of IC, Imperial City as well. These changes we're just going to kind of talk a little bit about. But first of all, artifact weapons. I'm going to say that I did do the intro quest where you get to kind of... I don't know, that might be a little bit of a spoiler for some people who haven't actually done it, but it doesn't matter because we're talking about them. Otherwise, I can't talk about anything. Is quite cool. Like, you know, when you go in there and you grab the weapons and he's showing you them, and, you know, I'm going to be very vague about it because I'm not going to say whatever, actually. It feels quite fun. It feels quite powerful. You know, you're against some NPCs. There's some, you know, good animations. I actually noticed that a lot of the animations are from the base game as well. And it felt quite good. But, I mean, I've played Cyrodiil a lot this week, even just off stream. I haven't seen one pop. It's not something I've witnessed yet. So I was thinking about this. I was like, have these guys witnessed this much? And they're in there, you know, a ton more than I am. And chat as well. If you want to, anyone in Twitch chat that's watching live right now, if anyone's witnessed it, you can obviously give your opinion as well. But Zele, have you witnessed any of these artifact weapons yet? What was your experience when you came across them?
I've literally used one before. I'll tell you this. I have mixed opinions about it, but the builds
can I ask you one question first? Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I just realized that I'm saying artifact weapons, and no one probably knows what I'm even talking about. Maybe if they're a new player, can you very, very quickly explain what an artifact weapon is and where it maybe appears? Like, what is the impact of it? What does it do?
So artifact weapons are what's the name of the one that we have in the games, like Volendrung or whatever? Yeah,
something
right.
like
It's, if I pronounced that wrong, sorry. So
It's all
an
good.
artifact weapon is a very special weapon that will spawn on the map. I don't know exactly how it spawns.
Mm.
I just know how it works. And I don't know exactly where you pick it up. I know there's been times where you can pick it up at your way shrine gates. So not at a keep, but actual like at your home way shrines. But so these weapons are obviously, Daedric imbued weapons, but they cost AP to use over time. So you have to keep killing people for you to actually go on and keep using the weapons. These weapons provide special abilities that aren't on your skill bar before. You only get these abilities while you're holding the weapon.
Mhm.
And one quick thing to note is if you have like a stronger 5-piece on one bar and you lose a 5-piece bonus on the back bar, if you pick up this weapon on your back bar, you have your back bar stats versus your front bar stats. So if you have like a 5-piece of Ravager, for example, on your back bar, or on only your front bar but on your back bar, you're gonna lose the weapon damage bonus. So try to pick it up on the right bar before I continue.
Good point.
So these stats that the weapon gives you itself, it pushes everything to like 42,000, right? You get 42,000 HP, stam, and magicka.
believe
And
so,
it's almost like a mini version of Cyrodiil's Emperor. And if people don't know what Emperor is once you capture the 6 keeps in the center ring around Imperial City, your number 1 player on your alliance that has the highest points on the leaderboards gets Emp bonus. So they get a huge stat boost. They get adds to recovery, to siege bonus, all of that.
Healing everything, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's really strong. So it's a mini version of that. From what I was told from numerous people, the artifact weapons were kind of made to counter the Emp. I don't believe that, because the same faction that has Emp can literally have the weapon at the same time. I've been zerked down with the Emperor, and someone else in that group had the artifact weapon. So if you have Emperorship, you're actually able to pick up the weapon.
Unless like the artifact weapon actually drops very far away from that alliance, I suppose.
Yeah,
and drops
true,
maybe
but,
for the other two, and maybe even drops twice in each area for the both opposing alliances. That's the only way I could really think it would possibly be a counter to it.
So originally the design of it, and I'm pretty sure the implementation of it as well, is that so Volendrung is supposed to be a kind of I guess it's not necessarily a counter to it, because Zele brings up a good point that was the misconception at the start that emperors can't get it, like it's the way to kill the emperor, but it was never really meant to be like that. Like whoever picks it up has that power, right? So there's we don't care if it's the emperor that's picking it up. If he made that trek to go get it, then whatever, have fun, right? But the original design of it is like, for example, let's say EP is pushing all the way to DC gates. DC has like the less keeps, the less population. There's a way higher chance that it will spawn closer to your gates or even at your gates, because it's supposed to be a tool to help push back. That's why it does so much damage to keep walls and stuff like that. So that's the design of it.
So that's the intended. Does that?
It's to push back.
Do you know if that is what actually happens?
I know that it's very underwhelming as like combat wise, like against players, but I know against keeps it's very strong. So that part I think it might be a little bit tuned. I haven't used it myself yet to know, but I keep hearing that it's super ridiculously strong against keeps and very underwhelming against players. So probably just that more in line with each other.
You nuke through the gates or walls or anything, like no problem. That goes down in no time, but against players is not that great. Like the ultimate, that is useful, but it's also really like if you don't get the kills in you or don't really have any good way to heal yourself or anything like that. So that can be very problematic.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I mean, if you get it even your spawn and players are pushing you, then you're not gonna be able to push out, because you haven't got that power to do it. So it's like you have to immediately try and, okay, that's a little bit awkward, I suppose. So I mean, I guess it's still quite early, right? They can always make adjustments and change things quite early.
Yeah, the first time we ever think about something like this in Cyrodiil for sure.
Yeah, so we can obviously, it's very forgiving, especially it just depends like how long will it take for them to change it, because it's been sold as like a kind of a feature, really. I mean, it's in the base. It's available base game though, isn't it? It's not a feature of elsewhere. It's a base game thing.
Yeah, it's a Cyrodiil thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
it's just added with elsewhere.
right. So it's but still, I don't know even know if it's like a main feature, really. I guess it's on the same level as Emperor, but a little bit under, because it's not like you get this crazy title or anything, but
It's not the same as Emperor because it just doesn't make you that efficient in combat.
yeah.
It only makes you like a living battering ram, basically.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, when I was like testing it when I first picked it up, I literally had more damage on my Stamplar without the weapon than when I was using the weapon. And at that, I had healing and everything better without the weapon. It's very lackluster. Exactly what Ruben said. You're a walking battering ram. And outside of that, the ultimate's pretty strong. The ultimate's great. Like for the it's like a big AoE like circle spinning attack. I don't know what I would call it. It's like a little tornado looking thing. But that hits hard. That's what I saw that was really nice. I saw a friend of mine get hit by that, and he had it like 17k on his recap or something. That's insane. And it's a giant AoE. But other than that, it is pretty underwhelming. On NPCs, it was hitting for nothing. But it was taking down keep walls really fast. There was someone that named Chapo on DC that picked it up, and just an example of how fast you can take keep walls down. I saw him run to Ash, and I went to go take a resource. By the time I was done with the resource, they already flipped Ash. Like the walls were down and everything. Like they took it in the same amount of time that I was taking just one resource by myself.
So can you with? I mean, does anyone do this? I mean, is it you just have it until you die, or is it that you have it until for a certain specific time?
I
don't actually know.
I didn't.
We lost
Gand. It's gonna look all funny, isn't it?
Oh dear. It's okay. For now, we'll leave it. Hopefully, he'll come back.
Yeah, but the weapon itself, like, you do have a bar. I haven't had it long enough to actually, I guess, die. Because when I was playing with it, I actually got DC'd from the game. But once you do die, someone else can come and pick it up. But like, I don't know how long you actually have to run around with it. All I know is that you need to keep killing players because it like absorbs AP or something like that. I didn't get to mess around with it too much. It was just a really short time, but it felt very underwhelming.
Just a quick note as well, if you are watching this on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, we've lost Gand. So when that happens, the cameras get bigger, and obviously there's a little bit of changing I have to do. But if he comes back, I'd have to change it back. So I'm not going to change the cameras right now because that would just be.
We can just change our position to fix it.
Positions. Yeah, that's right. I'll go like over here. Hi. You can see. But we're just going to continue. While it's going on. Anyway, you're listening to us anyway, so it's fine. If it's like 10 minutes or so, I will start to arrange them, but I don't know where he is. Hopefully he's all right.
Since it's kind of like, this is kind of like a slightly off topic. One thing I did do, Jebro, for my podcast is I had an extra scene that had just 3 cams set up already. So if someone did DC, I would just switch the scene over so it would fix itself.
Okay, what I could do.
That's what I ended up doing.
What I could do is just put this on, I guess. Just have this screen just for now. Just so it's something. Oh no, that's look awful as well. I guess it could do.
You grow as like a sad Gand text in our Discord chat, like Gand ?
Oh god.
F for Dan.
It's okay. We're still there.
Yeah, we need some F's in chat.
We'll get him back. We'll try to anyway. We will continue though. We will continue. So generally, I mean, what's your? Have you been able to use this, Ruben, much at all? Have you been able to use the?
Well, the thing is, I like to use it, but like already said, there is no real point in picking it up, especially when you are like solo. You aren't efficient in combat. So for me personally, the only reason when I would pick it up is when I would do group PvP.
Right.
But I don't do group PvP that much anymore either, so it's just so bad in combat. except for the ultimate. So I did enjoy like playing it for the effects for like 2 or 3 times, but then I was already like, nah. I expected something like really brutal, to be honest. I don't know, because it was promoted like you have to kill players to feed the weapon. Well, I personally was expecting with the weapon, I expected it to be powerful, but that you really like had to feed it, like really kill someone within 1 or 2 minutes, and that would slowly start to damage you already. Like the Chaos Ball, something like that time fragment. That's what I was expecting to really like destroy you, but it didn't really feel like something that was eating me.
It was overall, I think it's very underwhelming.
Yeah, agreed.
It's like if it's at the point to where it's so underwhelming that if I see it spawn on the map, I'm not gonna go pick it up.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
not gonna care for it. It's just
If it would spawn next to me, I would be nah.
Yeah, I would look at it and just be like, nah, and you literally just walk away, just like you would, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless I really want to like help a friend get amp, I'd pick it up then. Or maybe if I want to go flag and keep because my group wants to fight a big Zerg or something, that's the only benefit I'd see it having. But outside of that, I would even look at it. Just very overwhelming to me.
Okay, looks like we're not got him back for now, so we'll just leave it as is. I'm doing a little bit of a fix up as we talk, so I'm going to leave you guys with a subject for a second to talk about as well.
It always happens, and no matter how much you prepare, there's always something happening.
I know, this hasn't happened before, and
Zele
Zell's right as well. There is definitely a way to do this. But yeah, I'm kind of taking care of it, because apparently everyone wants to see your faces. I'm not sure why. But apparently that's
like orcs. They like to watch my orc face.
That's fair enough.
It's that giant mug you got, man.
Yeah, it's a mug. It's great, man. I always just fill it, and I don't have to walk downstairs anymore to refill.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing that.
I need to give me something like that. That's great.
Yeah, people love it.
Okay, right. So, next question as well. And maybe if I can think anything about. So, what do you think could be? Okay, there you go. So there's a theory. What do you think could be done to make the artifact weapon more? Is it simply just make it so it can do more damage against players? Is that is that an easy fix? Is that the easy thing that can be done, or is there anything else? Is there ways that you guys would change it specifically? Starting with Zele, you can go for it. Pressure, put on the pressure now.
I'm thinking, I really want to say damage increase overall on the weapon,
Right?
or even a heal. I think a self-heal would even be nice. But then again, if you're running around with this weapon, you probably have a group with you already healing you. So, but tooltip wise, I was looking at the tooltips, and it was, like I was saying, it was lackluster damage. The only thing that really hit hard was the ultimate. Maybe if they scaled the rest of the abilities to actually be more useful, and if not, have an increase of damage, give it like some sort of like rare debuff that only applies with the weapon. Like, I don't know, not necessarily like a root or snare. We have plenty of those in Cyrodiil, but maybe like minor vulnerability or something like that, More of the rare debuffs that aren't used too much, even though minor vulnerability they got given to Nightblade with this patch, right? With ambush or something like that. Or it was Mark, or it was something like that. I didn't really see. But I think if they just had it to where the damage helped in some way, shape, or form, or just give us like a really unique stat buff, because we do get the big pulls of 40k of the 3 stats, but it's not enough. It's really underwhelming. I was hitting NPCs with this weapon for like 11k like attacks. It's just like, dude, like my jab channel without this weapon is like literally hitting these NPCs sometimes for maybe like 20-30k in 1 second. It's just very underwhelming.
I also don't like how the weapon performs. Like, it was really brought to us as like a Daedric artifact, that is like eating you. You have to feed it. Maybe I'm just saying something random, like thinking outside of the box. But what could be cool, perhaps, is that if you don't feed a weapon, like every 2 minutes or so, there's maybe a stage it will do more damage to you, but the weapon also becomes more stronger because it wants to like it needs to be fed, you know. So something like a really cool future like that would be pretty cool in my opinion.
And
you
it
know?
can only be fed by players.
Yeah, you have to feed it, but let's say if you don't feed it, it starts eating you. But the weapon wants to be fed, so it also performs better. It does more damage.
Yeah.
So you become more vulnerable, but maybe also are capable of doing more damage.
Okay.
It's just something like,
I like
yeah.
that. I like that one.
That makes sense. Because the thing is now, I mean, so if you destroy a keep wall or a gate, that's not feeding it, right? That's not feeding it.
No.
So the main way to keep it, okay, so yeah, it's really counterintuitive to what it's supposed to be doing right now then. Okay, that makes sense. Because it's like, if you can't do the damage to the players, you can't even feed the thing so you can continue to use it.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like you need to feed it either. Like, I didn't really find anything that I was like, oh shit, I'm dying, you know, the weapon is starting to eat me or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And like Zele already said a couple of times, like, why would you even pick it up? There is no need. You do more damage without the weapon against NPCs and anything like that.
Right, okay.
Hammering down every keep wall gets quite boring as well.
Yeah.
My corgi's butt, you can see just in the bottom of my camera. It's just got his butt randomly there anyway. Yeah, good points, actually, completely. I mean, it would be cool, like, just some animations or even some sounds maybe that can just make that experience maybe a little bit better as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a fair bit to do for the artifacts, and maybe, you know, it's a kind of a new feature which is cool as well that they're hopefully working on to increase and change and alter a little bit here and there. I guess changing things like that wouldn't really be something they could do. They could start doing, obviously, but until console release happens, I guess they kind of have to wait for a lot of that. But I think the obvious thing is, you know, it doesn't really do that much damage. Doesn't feel as if, you know, not feeding it actually has any impact on you as a player or your team or anything like that. So
no, like some people said in the chat, it's being used for Emperor runs, like for stuff like that with a good group, but that is pretty much it.
Yeah,
I was kind of disappointed with it, to be honest, because we haven't really seen any changes to Cyrodiil or anything in like years, and this was the first thing like that finally, even just such a small thing still, it was something different, and now it's just totally not living up to the expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, that's not the nicest feeling in the world, especially if you just main that mode, and then the one thing, like you say, and it's, you know, it could be something which could really impact Cyrodiil, right? I mean, you could if it was impactful, literally. I mean, it's, you know, versus players is about, you know, it's not impactful, doesn't smash faces. That's what you want it to do. And then then it's just kind of like a wet paper towel effect.
Yep.
Unfortunately. Okay, that is a kind of crappy feeling, in all honesty, and you want to avoid those feelings where you can. So hopefully they can change something with that quite quickly. And then again, this kind of leads on to, you know, how maybe Cyrodiil players feel. And I don't want to get too salty, obviously, because, you know, we can probably go into that quite heavily.
But there was no point.
We
have already probably been doing that for years. So most of our salt is already out of the system.
I even wrote this in the notes. But I see not being in Cyrodiil. Do you guys miss it? Do you want to bring it back? Is there any point in having it there at all? Does it matter that it's not there anymore? Is it good that they removed it? Just as a little extra thing.
Personally, what I've seen, like Imperial City, it was already pretty much that. It was mainly used for gold farming, tower stone farming, and the main difference what you now have is everyone wants to farm tower stones in the CP campaign, because there you have champion points, and the NPCs are just as strong in CP as they are in non-CP. And now it's just that all the farmers from all the 4 servers are now together in one Imperial City. I actually played there the other day. It was a bit more competitive, and I actually did enjoy it more. But it's still not. It's still not at the levels of the old days where there was really like people all the time in the sewers and districts. Now it's really like, again, the 12-man Russian raid Zerg running around that Zergs everything down in its path. But personally, I did enjoy it a little bit more because there was just more life.
So from my experience, at least, I didn't see a big population boost to IC. I did see quite a few fights in the beginning, but I also think it's a little bit too early to really determine because a lot of people were actually still leveling Necro, and some people are barely leveling their Necro. I haven't finished leveling mine, but I think it's still very early. From what I've watched from other streams, because I do like to lurk on a bunch of my other friends' streams, mainly the PvPers, and they get more fights from what I've seen. Like, it is popped a little bit more, but I don't think it's really what people were expecting. I haven't seen a single Zerg like actually in IC myself or on anyone else's stream. It just gets to the point again to where they cap flags. Flag takes like a whole minute to flip, and it just becomes dead again. Like shortly after, like you get one good fight, and all of a sudden, that's it.
I think you're right, though. You make a good point. Like, maybe people are, and I think, especially if there is so many new players, right, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, IC hasn't really been something other than the event that we had. Was it just before Christmas?
You mean the double Telvar?
Yeah.
Or what?
I don't know.
Even with the double Telvar, the last days, it was just the last couple of hardcore farms. Even that wasn't enough too. It was like the first 2 days, like really popping. But even at the end of the double Telvar event, it was just farmers.
I was in there. I was having some good fun in there. Oh, what, NA? NA, though.
Did you play the last days of the event too?
Yeah. I played like later in it because I didn't even really know what it was. I kind of just went in there because I was like, it's a good excuse. It wasn't big fights. I will say that. It's like 2v2v2. It wasn't, and it was more like us go. So that's obviously not very big. It was fun, but it was very small. And I don't know what the maximum size of that instance is, in all honesty.
I have no idea either.
But you said a lot of new players are not in Imperial City like Jebro, and they are like leveling the Necromancer.
Well, I mean, not many new players would know what it is. Like, if people were starting with elsewhere.
I don't think they will overall stay either in Imperial City.
Right.
Because then we come back to the PvP discussion with like competitive players, and Imperial City is like really competitive. Most players you're going to see in Imperial City are like hardcore PvPers, and they will run Imperial physics set, which makes them like mini Emperors. You pretty much have to run that set because like 70% there uses it. So, yeah, the other day I was walking through the sewers, I saw like a CP 160, 200 grinding here and there. Sometimes I kill them, sometimes I let them go. But,
I saw you in there.
It literally feels like a private server almost, where like, it's like you go and run your own like third-party server, and you just have people join and then people leave, and nothing really significant happens. Kind of still on the same topic. There's no motivation to really even be in IC besides Telvar, and at that, there's not much to really buy with Telvar that people want.
Yep.
I think that even with like double Telvar events, I don't think that's enough to actually get people interested in the DLC itself. Because it's bought content, but why would you buy content that actually doesn't have content? There's no real motivation. IC died for a reason. The PvP disappeared for a reason because no one was there. No one wanted to really grind Telvar. There's nothing to really buy that people wanted inside Imperial City. So I was thinking even like a merchant overhaul, or add more sets, add more even like furniture, anything like that. Add more stuff into IC to motivate players to go back in there, farm for motifs, to farm for everything,
Yeah.
and just go and do that. I was even thinking like for the people that don't even like, because us PvPers, we have to PvE to get some of these nice PvP sets, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. Like PvEers will talk about like, oh, I don't want to go into PvP because I gotta level up my skill lines, but we gotta go in PvE that some of us don't like or care for to get our PvP sets. But kind
And
of
actually
Some of them
spend
we
more
also
time.
do PvE.
maybe even give us
That's
a
true.
way to like buy some of the dungeon sets with like Imperial City. It might be a little bit out of lore, yeah, but I mean, just a different way to get gear. It'll really motivate people to go in there instead of going into dungeons, or like it is a PvE PvP zone. So maybe more PvEers will even show up to grind Telvar so they don't have to go and like get the other sets.
Yeah.
We just need motivation for players to actually get up in there.
That's it, right? I mean, that's an MMO. I mean, everyone's in it for the rewards. It doesn't matter if you PvE or PvP. I mean, there is a reward in the good fights, and obviously that's nice to have, but you want something shiny to show for that. I mean, that's just generally most players, and it's kind of a shame that it's almost like that, but it is something extra, a skin, something you can, and for general public wise, like, I'm talking personally for me, I just enjoy the fighting stuff. I just, the killing, the achievement or whatever. But generally, I think most people just want the reward as well. And they will get better to get that reward. So like you said, I mean, if there was something unique for IC, but then it's about whether or not, that becomes then the popular thing just because of the reward. So it's like, how do you even that out? And then you've got IC, then you've got Battlegrounds, and you've got Cyrodiil. And you've got like these 3 different kind of PvP modes, sorry. PvP, PvE mode, and then you're splitting people even further, so it's quite difficult. Okay, I'm gonna just a quick one. Is there anything you guys want to add about IC at all, or
Sorry, what did you say at the end?
What just then?
Sorry, you said, is there anything you wanna
ads for IC or anything like that, or because it's not really Cyrodiil, but I just thought I'd mention it because it was removed.
Well, I agree with Lord Zele. There should be more incentives. The only reason people go there is farm Telva stones, buy alchemy bags, make gold. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But with gold, we cannot get our bone pirate or whatever set you want to get.
Right.
I mean, with AP, you can buy jewelry or something like that. But even then, if you have to wait weeks for one set, you're probably going to grind because you want to progress further.
You want to get it ASAP. Right. It's fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so we've talking about IC, and obviously this is something that is always thought about and always mentioned. But I don't know, and I don't know whether or not this has changed massively, because I was playing Cyrodiil last night. I made it a point to play it on stream because I wanted to see whether or not this was the case still. And is obviously a bit of a sore subject, but lag since elsewhere, and the removal of IC and Zele. Okay, so for anyone else that is new to Cyrodiil and everything else, or if you're watching the podcast or you're listening to it somewhere else and you're interested in this mode as well, the mode is great, but is well known for having lag. Now, RVR in general, in games, in every single game I've ever played, has issues with lag. It's just the amount of animations, the amount of players, the amount of stuff that's going on your screen at any one time, with the amount of different PCs and configurations you've got, is very difficult to make that happen. I mean, there's Camelot Unchained right now who boasts a certain amount of 100 players on your screen, and it doesn't lag. Guarantee that releases, that's not going to happen. There's almost, there's things like collision, there's, the increased lag, there's all this other stuff. And it's so difficult to manage. So I just want to preempt this with my own experience of playing so many different RVR games. Elder Scrolls is actually not the worst ever. And there is definitely games out there that are worse off in terms of their lag. But it is but with how Elder Scrolls is so skill heavy, and in terms of things like breaking free, so you can actually get out of stuns and things like that, abilities that, if you want to dodge something, if you want to block something, if there's lag, if you block something or if you don't block something, you could die. It's as simple as that. If you can't break free, if you can't pop off an AoE heal, that it's so important, because you can die so quickly in ESO, in Cyrodiil. And I had this experience last night. I couldn't pop off my healing spring, and there was only 10 of us in front of a keep, like with 5 or 6 people running out. and it was quite frustrating. So I'm thinking that with the removal of IC and even post kind of elsewhere on PC, lag issues haven't changed too much, or have they?
Gotten worse.
Gotten worse.
From my personal experience about lag is in general, it's obviously really frustrating. Small things like lag, well, actually no, big things like lag will really take away the whole mechanics from the game, because everything is essentially laggy. Skills will go off seconds later, or they won't go off at all. Heals won't go off, like you were saying. If your heal isn't going off, you're dead. Like there's just things that are mechanic breaking, and that goes into lag. With the removal of IC, I honestly don't know what they expected. We all know IC was dead before, regardless. What is removing like a few players going to really do for the server? Like you were saying, you were outside a keep with maybe 10 people on your side, maybe 6 of the enemy by a keep, and you're just lagging hardcore.
But it wasn't even my movement, it was just the skill.
Just
like
skills,
it was the AoE circle placement. I wouldn't get the circle, and that was it. Like I could see, all the action was happening on my screen, but I couldn't. That mug is ridiculous. Sorry.
Thank you, I like it.
All right, sorry. Ruben has a massive mug. Take that how you will. But sorry, I had to get that joke in there. But yeah, it was not fun. Sorry, carry on your points, Al.
One thing I did see recently from other people's streams, though, that I will say, and from personal experience again, of course, because I do PvP pretty often.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Lag, of course, is still there, mainly during prime time. But even then, I was watching someone stream, and they were leading a big 24-man group, and there was no lag actually going on in the fight. It was a 3-way faction fight, and blue even had the artifact. Artifact does bring attention to you, even though it kind of feels a little underwhelming. And I was watching the combat. The frames were like 30, 20. That's kind of expected in those giant fights.
Yeah.
But there's no lag. Like I was watching it, and even the streamer was like, "Yo, that was one of the cleanest and smoothest fights I've had, large scale wise, like ever." And I'm not a big fan of large scale, because sometimes it does feel unplayable. I'm not a big fan of large scale, but I'll tell you this: if I was ever interested in it, it was that specific stream where I was like, "Yo, this is awesome. This is literally what Cyrodiil was meant to be, how they hyped it up. Just 3 giant armies just fighting consistently, and it was awesome."
I've had that experience as well. It's true.
This was the experience.
Like, no, that's pretty much it. But it's rare. But lag is still there during prime time, but there are great moments where it just doesn't exist for some reason.
I mean, we used to have lag in 2014 when the game was subscription based as well, but then we literally had hundreds versus hundreds versus hundreds, and I was like, I totally understand it. There are these massive fights, but nowadays you already get lag. It even starts during midday already here in Europe. We start to see lag, and on top of that, it is for me personally that every patch it felt like it got worse. Instead of seeing improvement, if I would see improvement, I would be very positive, and I try to be. But now 4 or 5 years later, and it's just gotten worse. Population in Cyrodiil has been significantly reduced. I see nowhere near as big fights as we used to be, and the lag has just gotten worse, So that is, for me personally, the thing that I just don't have a lot of hope that is going to become better. That is the main thing, I kind of given up hope for it.
Oh, wow. Ruben's given up hope.
100%. I agree again with Ruben. Right. From being in the PvP community, getting to know everybody, the biggest complaint was literally lag, and that was the reason why so many great players were leaving the game. And yeah, they may not be quantity wise, we were already losing people, but we weren't just losing the quantity players, we were losing the quality players as well. We were losing streamers, content creators, so many people Even I made a video a while back for my YouTube, and I was like, "Yo, I'm putting down ESO. I can't take it anymore. The lag is just too frustrating. The frame drop is just too frustrating. I'm gonna take a break and see if I enjoy it again if I come back." And I do now. I really do like it after my break. But so many people are leaving the game because of lag. Like specifically,
Cyrodiil specifically, just in case you're listening to this.
Yeah. Cyrodiil PvP specifically, guys.
Yeah.
And this is for the PvPers. You go into a stream. I'm gonna tell you this: go watch someone that is PvPing in Cyrodiil. You're gonna hear multiple complaints of lag. You're gonna hear my skill isn't going off. You're gonna hear people like, "Bro, why can't I heal?" You hear that in my stream. You hear that, and like a lot of people's PvP streams.
That was me last night.
It's there consistently, man.
Yeah,
that was me last night.
The thing is also like, some people say go to battlegrounds, but battlegrounds are only like fun for a few times. There is no variety in battlegrounds, and on top of that, if you're gonna do a couple of battlegrounds, you're gonna be having higher MMR, so you're only gonna be facing like pre-mid battlegrounds or like it's all healing. It's like so incredibly boring. Like higher end battlegrounds.
I mean, the argument
it's
about
really
that,
boring.
the argument about that is the battlegrounds of Cyrodiil are completely different. They're
Yeah,
just different.
I know, but even then, people are like,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And what Lord Zele said, by the way, about people like leaving the game, I agree 100%. If I look to like, I used to do a lot of like small scale PvP, like forming groups and duo PvP. I have no friends, I already used to be friendless IRL, but now I don't even have friends to play with in Cyrodiil anymore.
Aww, Ruben.
This is so sad.
That is sad.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
We're your friends, don't worry. We'll be your friends, won't we, Zele?
Thank you.
Say it, man. There you go. Got 2 friends.
Kind of on the same topic, guilds are leaving. Like it's literally not just singular players, man. Like, I ran an older guild back in the day, and it was called Knights of Tellius, and we got stuff done. I'm gonna tell you this: the core group of that guild that was all about small scale to like wipe zergs, they're gone.
Oh, really?
Pretty much every single one of them, besides like 2 of them, out of the 20 that we really played with, like not all together at once, but like different groups. They all quit. They just have no interest in the PvP because they feel like the developers just like don't care for it. Like this is our first
this is
anything for Cyrodiil in a long time. They added an artifact.
That's the problem.
That's underwhelming.
Oh, that's the problem. Okay, I'm gonna hit with that's the nerve hit. That's the nerve hit. But I mean that's the thing, and it is important. It is important. I feel like I almost feel like I feel sorry for them because I know because I've spoken to devs and I've been to studios and I know how they've literally they're at a point like different. I'm not talking about Zos because I've not been there. Where it's almost like trying to find those issues, and it could be like the coding, it could be like something that's just come in with a patch that's changing something else. Necro is new animations, whether or not that's overloading things even more. Different loads of different things that can affect this mode, and it almost feels like whether or not you can reduce graphical settings or animations or something to such a basic degree. Or skins, or so. I mean, there's something that Guild Wars 2 actually did, which was quite effective, and it was to change player skins, everyone other than yourself, to a very standard skin, so it doesn't have to load different skins. And obviously, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a dev, I have no idea how that would impact it, but it was actually something which really improved the experience. So if you think about it, if you've got standardized skins, everyone's just wearing exactly the same armor. Or there's a light armor variant, a medium armor variant, and a heavy armor variant. And that's just one skin. When they put that system in, and that was an option for the player, that wasn't something that was put in specifically for everyone. It wasn't forced. If that was actually an option, it was something that actually improved it vastly. And was something, I was wondering whether or not has been tried, and I've not got the opportunity to speak to anyone like Rich or anyone like that. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely options. I think the frustration is warranted in the most respectful way possible that it's meant. Because it's, you want your mode to work. That's it's as simple as that, right? You want it to function, you want it to work, so you can have that base level fun and then move on and then, you know, build on that base. Because if you just keep throwing stuff on top, it's inevitably just going to break even further. I think we're going to move on from that. I think inevitably we can all agree, and I think anyone who's listening to this is like, lag is bad, people. We don't like it. But yeah, I mean, I'm probably just going to move on, to be fair. I've watched a few videos, and I actually watched a little bit of I only got to watch a little bit of your previous podcast, Zele, and there was an interesting point, which, you know, that added to my first part, and this is roles, PvP roles in Cyrodiil. And this is something that is very, you know, very much the case in BGs as well, in all honesty, in Battlegrounds, which is the instance PvP free teams versus each other of 4. In case you, again, people don't know, for whoever's watching or listening. It feels like you can be a damage dealer, a tank, and a healer all in one, and it's quite frustrating when someone won't die, basically. And it feels almost like, I don't know, is that a good thing? Do you think there should be more defined roles? Do you think that, you know, it's fine the way it is? You should be able to build how you want to build, you know, you should be that way. But it also kind of feels to me a lot of the time most people just kind of build. I mean, it feels like, it's like when you're in PvE, right? If you're a damage dealer, you should just deal damage. Like if you've gone that way, you shouldn't be able to survive. That should just be the way it is. If you're a tanky player, you've got survivability, you can take damage. But you shouldn't be able to kill someone necessarily. Maybe kill them, but not like, you know, do ridiculous burst damage. If you're a healer, you should be healing. You shouldn't necessarily just be able to, I mean, you know, debuffing your target. I suppose in ESO a little bit more, if you are focused mainly on healing, you're not going to be doing that much damage, but you can still pull off something. You guys feel there should be more defined roles in Cyrodiil, or do you think, you know, that it's fine the way it is?
I'm really mixed on it. Man, this specific conversation could go on for a long time.
I mean, just I'll give you a couple of minutes.
I feel like the roles right now are kind of useless unless you really specify what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just an example, heavy armor DKs right now, you could just run around in 2 damage sets wearing heavy armor, have insane healing and stupidly strong damage. And then with the healing stacked with heavy armor, you get more resist, you get more healing added. It's just, you become essentially all 3 roles. You become a damage dealer, you become a healer as in not necessarily healing others unless you're just like stacking vigors, but you're really healing yourself. You're getting giant boost of healing on DK already. But kind of like what I was saying earlier, when you stack like stuff like weapon damage, right, it adds to your healing as well. And the fact that there's these heavy armor sets that give more damage than some medium armor sets. And keep in mind, medium armor is supposed to be the damage dealer, like armor, like I guess weight.
Yeah.
You get more crit, you get more passive weapon damage from medium armor passes versus heavy. But then there's all these heavy armor sets that give giant amounts of weapon damage. And they give more weapon damage than the medium armor sets. Like, I don't see how or why that's a thing.
Wow, okay.
Like,
is there an example you can give me of that of a specific, because I don't know. I'm not sure which.
Specific Fury, 7th Legion,
okay.
Veiled Heritance.
Ravager.
I was going to bring a Ravager, yeah. Those Ravager is literally like clever alch but heavy, but higher uptime for Stamplar. It's insane, man.
But healing is reduced. Healing is reduced in BGs. Like, I know some healing abilities are reduced in BGs, right? Is that the same for Cyrodiil?
Yes. The same what's it called? The
calculation or whatever, it's just adjusted.
Battle Spirit. That applies to both BGs and Cyrodiil, it's the same. Right. The only thing is that if you're in a CP campaign, you also have champion points adding to all your healing as well. And add more resistance, you're more tankier in CP because of that. But yeah, no, Battle Spirit applies to all PvP zones.
So do you think they should just make Cyrodiil non-CP?
You already have a non-CP.
Yeah,
But
You
like
can play.
you just think, but you think that having that difference is big because everyone goes into the CP one, right? That's where the population is. What if they changed it to just no CP completely?
Well, then you take away something that people have grinded for a lot, so that would probably piss off a lot of people. And personally, I know a lot of people prefer CP actually over non-CP. So in
Is that
regards to
because
that,
they
I
can
don't
live
really
forever,
feel
though?
like I don't feel like you should force people to play CP or non-CP.
Yeah.
They already do that with Battlegrounds.
That's true.
So that is something I think the PvP community will be really divided on.
Okay.
Yeah, so the PvP community enjoys the CP. We enjoy it. The only problem I think with CP and specifically in Cyrodiil is that we have so much to use. We have 810 points. Back when the cap was at least, let's say 500, 501.
Yeah.
I think that was like good because it forced you to pick where you want to put your points at. Now we have 810 points. We get, instead of just focusing in one area, we're like, I want to deal extra damage, but I also get all this extra healing because of the extra CP that I have now that I didn't have back then. I just think there's too many points to allocate. We have a lot of points. I personally think that we should drop the CP a bit because ever since the CP kept going higher and higher, there's been more really broken builds out there because of CP. Because you're able to just put it everywhere instead of focusing in one actual area.
So what if you could? What if they? Because you. So what if I'm playing devil's advocate, I guess, or trying to find a middle ground? What if people like the CP because they like you said, Ruben said the grind, and obviously you said you like it for your reasons. So, what if you had a Cyrodiil specific CP application? So you've got the same window you have now. When you go into, you go into the different trees, you go into astronaut, whatever. But they're Cyrodiil specific and limited. So you can't. So your CP gets. You have maybe a portion of what you had before. Now it's still the same. You still got some CP, but like you say, it's lower, so it's more manageable and it's a little bit more important where you put that. And the difference maybe is that you put 1 point into something and it maybe makes, maybe less of a difference, but it still gives you an edge, right? And you've still got it, which I feel is part of the appeal of CP as well. Even if it is a massive, jump, like you say, from 500 to 810, but you kind of take away some of those things from CP at the moment. I'm hoping this makes sense. Basically, you have a completely different window. You remove a ton of the stuff that might be considered overpowered that you put into, that you put your CP into, and it gets adjusted basically. But you still have that feature. Does that make sense?
I get you. So maybe I don't really want to say like a CP lock, but like I could see something like that being only for Cyrodiil specifically. That way, the PvEers or outside of Cyrodiil just in general, you still get the rest of the A10. Maybe something like a CP lock would be nice, because a lot of these builds, like I'm telling you, they're really broken. Like some people can just infinitely heal and just deal crazy amounts of damage still.
Or even that you could only dedicate yourself to a certain type of tree or certain different ones, so that then that is your focus. So your build and everything else is fine. You are going damage and you've got a healing set on top of that, whatever. But then you can only go into one specific tree or 3 of the specific trees within that region. Do you know what I mean? Because then it does pinpoint your build a little, but not so much. I don't know. I kind of don't mind that idea.
I don't know. I think it will make things even more complicated and for everyone, to be fair. I mean, I get what you're saying. But I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah. Just
Yeah,
trying to
that is
think
really
of-
interesting. Maybe when you're in Cyrodiil, no one uses the role option when you press your group button, you get the low group tap. No one really uses the healer, the tank, the damage dealer.
Hmm.
Maybe if we even had something like, and I'm not saying this would necessarily be a good change, but just kind of to throw the idea out there. Let's say I click on healer. It gives me access to the healing CP. Let's say I click on the damage dealer. It gives me all the access to just the damage style CP, and maybe make and the same with the tank. You get the higher resistance CP if you wanted that, all of that. That way you're not trying to be a tank and then specking everything into the damage line.
Could be. It's
So
just
I
an
don't
interesting
know.
change.
Something like
yeah.
that could work, but
Just
it'd be
something that's interesting.
really complicated.
Yeah, that's the problem because it's already complicated, like Ruben
Mhm.
says as well.
Yeah.
It gets more difficult. You don't want to make things too difficult, especially after
Mhm.
people just got used to it. Kind of get used to this one system. Okay. Having a look. Where are we going now? Okay, roles. Okay, we've kind of gone over that actually. I think we've gone over that. Let's carry on. Talking about like small scale and large scale, it's not versus, I guess, really. But just to say, and for new viewers, and obviously Ruben and Zele, you can kind of add to this because obviously you're a ton more experienced than me, obviously, within Cyrodiil. But to me, like large scale fighting is, and doesn't necessarily have to be siege. It doesn't have to be a keep. It can be 2 or 3 of the teams coming together, even if it's 30, 40 players, big fights. That's kind of large scale. I kind of see it. And obviously like keeps and large scale fights. And then the smaller scale fights could be like, it could even be 1v1 to say 5v5. And like these havoc kind of groups that run around just causing trouble behind enemy lines and whatnot. Do you think the newer players hover to the more large scale stuff, and the more experienced players maybe go towards the small scale fighting? And do you think the small scale fighting is a product of, is it a product of something like lag, or would you encourage people to try and find the smaller fights, or to kind of wander off on their own a little bit more in smaller groups? Or this all leads up to something I'm going to ask you guys in a bit as well.
I have a good idea of what I want to say, but if Ruben, if you want to,
Well, you can go first.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
this all depends up to the player, but okay, so let's say you were interested in large scale. Overall view of large scale, you're in the war, you're fighting Cyrodiil according to the lore itself, because Cyrodiil was meant for big fights. A lot of people don't like hearing that, but yes, Cyrodiil was literally advertised as a giant PvP zone. So before any small scalers get upset, that's what the developers said, and it's kind of obvious they really
it's
do
massive
support
scale
the large
warfare.
scale.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
what all of these modes are sold on for sure.
But there are definitely good players in both small scale and large scale, but I feel like if you're running around in a big 24-man group, you're dealing with more lag essentially down the line, but 2, you're not learning as much as you would in small scale fights. You can literally join a 24-man raid just by typing LFG in zone and get invited to a group. Cool. If you want to go to the group fights and flip keeps, get AP that way, awesome, then do it. Just do what you enjoy. But if you want to get, in my opinion, better at the game, and you want to really learn the mechanics in the game, try out small scale. You're not going to get as much lag, but every move you do in small scale matters a lot more than the big Zerg fights. In the big Zerg fights, there's a lot of room for mistakes. Like I said, you could get yourself killed, but then get rezzed right afterwards by someone else, kind of like what I was saying earlier. You could literally be that dude snipe spamming in the back or just bow light attacking. Just that's it. That's all you're doing. You're just left clicking. Maybe a poison inject here and there. You're not really going to learn. You're not going to learn how to necessarily when to CC your opponent, when to this, when to drop ults on the group, when to stack heals. It's just a big blob. So I look at it. There's organized Zergs out there. Don't get me wrong. There's some people that will tear the map up because they're just that dedicated. So they run a specific like guild group, but it's more medium to like large scale. But essentially, it all depends on what you want. Do you want quality or quantity? Quantity being large scale and quality being small scale. I know when I went from, because I used to lead Zergs. I know when I went from leading Zergs, being that light attacker myself, that's all I did, and just told people to move. When I went to small scale, I got a lot better at the game. I learned to actually like, oh, I should really focus my build here more, because I didn't realize I was taking so much damage because I was stacked with the Zerg in the same build, you know? So you really sit there, you look at your build, you think about what you could change, you try to find other small scalers that you want to PvP with. You're not getting as much lag. I just think overall it's just been a better experience for me, and it's why I've never really gone back to Zerging. I just feel like if you're really interested in the strong, hardcore, like sweaty mechanics of ESO, then try to small scale, get some friends, and try to not go in there with PvE builds first of all. Go in there with PvP builds, and just play together. Try to avoid the Zergs. If you fight the Zergs, then good luck, because it does get a little rough sometimes. You get overwhelmed a lot, but that's all part of improving in the game itself. So you will fight those Zergs that just stomp your group of like 4, 5, 6. It happens all the time. It happens to everybody. That's part of the game. But down the line, if you're really interested, small scale, I think, has been the best PvP for me. Or I know it's been the best PvP for me, but I think it's also the best PvP out there that will help you learn, at least.
Ruben?
Yeah, I agree. But like, I also think like people calls a group or something in ESO very quickly Zerging nowadays. Like back when I started 2004, I had my PvP guilds, and while we used to like have 1 or 2 groups running of 24 people, we would just be a bunch of plebs in TeamSpeak having fun, and let's say together, okay, let's attack Ash. But we like, so one people could say, oh, you're 40 people, you're a Zerg, but we were like spread out all across Ash, you know, we were not like a blob together. Like if someone joins a group in Zone Chat and he's in a 24-man group, but they are all like spread out at a keep, I wouldn't consider that necessarily like Zerging. But when people like 40-man TeamSpeak all stacked up, like that is like Zerging for me personally. And you know, in the end, it's about enjoying like just joining up with friends and like TeamSpeak. That is what I enjoyed most back then. But I agree with Lord Zele, like small scale really made me a better player. Like dueling back then, doing 1v1s really helped me improve as a player. And then later when I would be in group PvP, I would also perform better. Though nowadays with champion points, I really don't do dueling anymore, because people have like such well, let's not say that word, but you know what kind of really shitty PvP builds that are just unkillable.
Find the word that isn't swearing.
Yeah, I don't know how you use it. Like, I use it all the time
okay.
for these kind of builds, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like no fun anymore. Nowadays, duels last like 10, 20 minutes, and even then, it's still going. Back then, a duel would be a few minutes. I would get some feedback, and it was enjoyable.
Okay. I mean, to me, that from what you both say is kind of almost just what you enjoy as well. But then you can really appreciate that. It's like in BGs, and it's one of the reasons in Guild Wars 2 where I felt that I wanted to go and just do something where I can improve as a player. Like smaller scale was BGs for me, SPVP in Guild Wars 2, and it was like that's where I improved as a player. And then I applied that to the World versus World, the Cyrodiil in ESO, obviously, ESO, sorry, and that's where, you know, I could tell I improved, because like you say, you know, in this mentality where you push through as a massive group, you are less inclined to. I mean, I'm just saying, it's that mob mentality almost, you know, you're just kind of running through and just getting like super keen and you're happy and just like trouncing people and running over their corpses. And you're just like, you know, you're infinite happily. And I think there's definitely pulls for both. You know, I enjoy the kind of the larger fights where you can just trash the enemy and just, you know, get that keep. That's kind of, you know, fulfilling. If there's been a massive siege as well, especially because I really like siege in ESO. Like I think sieging is one of my favorite parts of any RVR game. Like and especially if you're able to, and in defending as well, you know, everything you got like the oil and stuff like that, and you know, anti-sieging and all that kind of stuff is really, really fun. I think it's something which, you know, ESO actually is probably one of the better games at, actually, than a ton of games out there. But I think there's definitely different aspects you can enjoy, and there's different aspects where you feel like you can definitely be applying your own skillful nature as a PvPer, like Zele says, in that smaller scale. And I think, you know, even as a Zerg leader, we say Zerg, I think Zerg is seen as a negative phrase a lot of the time, which is probably why people don't like to be associated with it. Because, they're Zerg and that's why they're doing that. But it's like, you know, if they're organized and that's their thing and they're doing well at it, if you're the leader of that group or that party, that large party, you've still got to decide targets to hit, right? You've still got to decide some kind of tactics. So there's still some kind of skill in that. I mean, Zoe, you said, you know, that you led those, so you know how tough that was at times, especially getting people to even follow you in the first place as well, I guess, unless they know who you are, obviously, which I suppose they did after a while. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I think I've enjoyed both sides myself. I guess actually that's kind of most of what I wanted to talk about. It kind of leads up to something I wanted to talk about later on, but it also how impactful smaller scale PvP can be on the more macro part of the game, the larger area of Cyrodiil. Like, can small scale PvP actually affect the outcome of larger fights elsewhere in Cyrodiil? Is that something that's... Go for it.
So this is something that a lot of people don't realize. Okay, a lot of small scalers, it's true. We don't care about the map. We don't care about the leaderboards. We go in there for the good fights.
Yeah.
Another thing that people don't realize is that when we're fighting the enemy, whatever enemy is in front of us, the other groups aren't fighting. We're distracting people. Where, let's say we go on flag roll so we can get a Zerg to try to farm. And they're like, oh, you're not really helping us with the map. You're not really trying to capture the keep. No, we're not. But what you guys don't realize is that we're distracting a large group for you.
Mm-hmm.
We may not be trying to directly help you guys, but indirectly, we're helping you. Every number we pull away from a keep is another number you don't have to deal with while you're trying to take the map over, or go get amp, or go take a scroll. That's what people don't realize. And when stuff unflags, etc., sometimes that same Zerg will keep chasing our small group. If we get overrun, we get overrun. But we're still distracting the enemy. That really does have impacts on the map that people don't realize. We may not be adding points to the leaderboards, to the overall
eventually,
faction.
I guess, if someone's taking a keep, like you say, and you take those numbers away, but you're not directly giving those points, but you're helping, like you say, in the long run to get there.
And if they want to, yeah, exactly. And if they want to look at it from another perspective, you know, what I was saying is that we're distracting the enemy while they are chasing us in an open field or wherever. They're not getting more points for their own faction because they're tunnel visioning us. They're not capping resources or keeps. They're not getting more points for themselves. So we're literally not just distracting players that they don't have to fight. We're distracting the faction from getting more points overall. I really do think small scale impacts Cyrodiil a lot more than some people think. It's really rough right now, and it's really hard to have successful small scale fights. But at the end of the day, we're still taking players away from other factions that our faction doesn't have to deal with. That's all it really is.
Yeah, no, I like that. Ruben, do you want to add anything to that?
I mean, no, he explained that perfectly, man. Not much to add to that, to be honest.
I mean, I can give you my own personal experience, which I had yesterday, which was actually really epic. And if you're watching this, and maybe I can post this somewhere in the description, it was a situation where I think they were called SOTD or something like that on EP. I can't remember I think it was something like that, the guild. And they were just asking if anyone wanted to join. It was SOTD, something like that. And they were like, does anyone want to join? to just go on this like little mission around. Because I was in one of those, you know, when you say you put the LFG in and no one was inviting, and then they popped up, and I was like, yeah, sure, Jesus, I'm going to join someone. Otherwise, I'm on my own. And then these guys went deep into like another alliance's territory, and I was like, I was on my Necro, so my mount was like, you know, 20%, 10% speed, because obviously it's only been out for a little bit, and unless I buy gems, you know, I mean, I got the buff, but I'm still not as fast because I've still not got that base speed, right? And I kept falling behind. But so that was a challenge in itself. But then when I got to them, we were just at a keep, and we were just, you know, we were just knocking on the door, and they weren't allowed to port back. You know, it completely wrecked their porting around the map. It just destroyed it. And we were just crouching in front of keeps and just knocking doors down and just running away. And they would come out and they might beat us a little bit, but someone would put a forward camp out and we would be all right. And it was just awesome. It was just completely different. It was like, you know, we were just kind of hovering in front, all crouched down, ready. I've got some wicked screenshots. And it was actually really fun. And we really did impact what was going on elsewhere. And I said on the map, you know, I kind of almost did a before and after. Our alliance EP was just kind of, we didn't have many keeps left. We were actually back to one of our scroll keeps, and then the rest of the map was yellow and blue, and it was just like, Jesus, like we're getting completely screwed. After this, when I left this group, we'd actually started to push out because they'd had to pull back, and it was just awesome how like you could really actually influence it. And it was what, an 11-12 man group max at all times, and it was really impactful, and it was actually quite fun to see that. And one thing I would like to see as well is that groups like that and objectives maybe could be pushed more by ZOS, or in some kind of objective where there are bonus objectives, like hit this keep, get a gate down or something, and you get a buff, or you get some kind of their port is down for like certain amount of time or something, you know, some kind of reward for doing that kind of thing. Because it would, and I'm not saying it can work two ways. One, it means that people fight less, there are less larger fights, which is obviously not good. And two, it just means the Zerg could just go to this one place, and then that's where the larger fight happens, and you're directing even more. So I suppose my next question, I don't know where that is on the document at all, because I think it kind of leads into it. Do you think there's enough reasons for people to go to play? Do you think it's, you know, Cyrodiil should be this creative thing where you can just go where you want and create your own game, essentially, where you can just take down a keep, or there's some kind of method in the madness or whatever? Or do you think that ZOS could maybe put some more objectional things in the game for whether or not it's the new players or organized guilds or anyone, or organized groups, whatever, where they should take down specific objectives and they get bonus rewards or anything like that? Do you think that's pointless, or do you think there's things they could put into the game that could help to incentivize players a bit more? I don't know.
Well, then we kind of come back to like the whole reward thing, I think.
Yeah.
You talk about like objectives and the whole impact of the map. And like in 2014-15, when I led my guild, I absolutely loved that. I absolutely loved playing the map and objective. We actually had a guild for all the DC PvP guilds, because back then you had like veteran rank, so grinding was incredibly hard. So there wasn't really any faction hopping, because people had one or two characters and they were like, okay, never again. And we actually did a lot of coordination, like what you were talking about, the gates, like troll sieging. We would send one person to, let's say, Chelman, get that keeper in a siege, and then you push Ayleswell and you could take it more easily. But I don't think the rewards are like that interesting. That's why people are not doing it anymore. Leveling has become much easier, so faction hopping became a thing, and stuff like that. One of the things I never understood is why they removed master weapons from the rewards. I don't know if you know this, but you had like veteran rank 14, and if you became the top 2%, you could get master weapons. I absolutely loved it. Like, it actually gave me a reason to like,
how could you get
let's
them,
make sure I become the top 2%.
What would they would just assign them to you on a drop, or
You would
would
get
it be
master weapons in the middle if you were like the top 2% in regard to scoring
for like
with
a
alliance
month?
points
What for the
in PvP.
was this for a certain time period or for that point period or?
Well, like that campaign, if you
For that
were like
campaign.
at the end of the campaign, you were the top 2% of your alliance, you would get a master weapon.
What,
in your
and they
mailbox.
removed it?
Yeah,
With that.
I think we were at veteran rank 14 when it became 16. They removed it somewhere like in those lines.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
No.
I still look at my veteran rank 12 and 14 master boy. I'm like, feels bad, man.
That seems like a really good. But what? So veteran rank is just AP based, right?
Veteran rank, yeah. Veteran rank were the levels before champion points. So veteran rank 12 is what is CP 120 now.
Ah,
But in
so
terms of grinding,
Of
veteran ranks were much worse. You didn't have experience potions, no training gear, nothing. It was terrible. It was really grinding heavy.
So what if it was a PvP rank instead, or something like, you know, each week if you get certain amount of, not AP, because it's just a grindable thing then. I mean, I guess, you know, materials and crafting wise is still grinding, but you need to equate that to the same amount of time spent, right? Somehow, in terms of like grinding AP or whatever, if it was like, if it changed into that kind of system. But what if it was like the top 2% of people who are in Cyrodiil with that campaign that got a master weapon? Like Emperor. Like, you know, you get Emperor. So if the top person gets, there you go, here we go, sorted. Emperor, someone gets an Emperor every campaign or whatever. No one else gets anything else, right? Zero. Absolutely bugger all. Do they get any gold or anything? Because I
You
don't
get
actually
like
know.
end of campaign rewards. That's what you get.
They get, are they good?
If you win the campaign, they are decent in terms of gold, but it's not that decent that I would say that people really go out of their way to say, "Oh, guys, we're gonna win this campaign because we need to get the rewards." Like, it's not that, because I mean the gold is nice, but it's not such a high amount of gold. Like, if we talk Imperial City grinding, you can get it in like 20, 30 minutes that amount of gold as well.
How much gold is
So,
it? Do you remember?
I
Do you
think
know?
like maybe 100k if you win 30-day campaign. You know that, Lord Zele?
Man,
mean,
isn't it like 19, 20k? Isn't it something minuscule like that?
I have
I thought it, yeah, maybe it is actually. I know it's like 10, 12k if you lose, but
What you do get is golden, like jewelry, and the gold jewelry can be, I mean, just depending on which jewelry pieces you get, they can be sold for a lot, and I mean a lot.
Right,
Some of
okay.
them are also worth garbage, but
It depends what lucky draw set you
Yeah.
get, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's
But that's
RNG.
not motivating enough for people to really like care about the leaderboard. That's why a lot of us small scalers don't. We're like, oh yay, we're gonna get maybe a max of 20k given gold and a few jewelry pieces that are probably gonna be worth like 10, 15k each.
And that doesn't equate to the amount of time that you spent in the actual mode itself at all. Because then, yeah, I mean, I'll probably get much more than that just PvE in a week.
yeah.
Just
And then you could
normally.
probably back towards that you want to do like character progression. I mean, what if you would get, and again, this is just something totally random, could be really like terrible idea as well. But what if you could like earn tickets you could actually buy like PvE gear with or something like that, so you can actually
Absolutely.
stay in PvP and work on your own
Yeah.
character progression, because that is one of the things I have with PvP. I just I get a skill point, you know, when I go on an alliance rank up, but in the meantime, I'm having millions of AP that I never really do anything with. I could convert it to gold, but in the end, with gold, I can't do anything either, because material-wise, doing my daily crafting rits is more than enough for me. And if I want something like Bone Pirate or whatever PvE set, I will still have to do PvE.
Yeah. There is actually a really good system in a couple of different games, but I'll use Guild Wars 2 as an example again, because
The level scrolls, you mean?
no. They're called
I actually love
reward
that system
tracks.
too.
they're called reward tracks actually, and you actually have chests that you open. So but this is in both the Realm versus Realm stuff and the small scale battleground stuff. You basically have this track, this line that you go along, and as you gain experience, whether or not you win, lose, or draw, or whatever, or how much you've contributed to your alliance or whatever, you go up this track, and you get chests depending on how far you go. So towards the end, you get a reward, and the reward is it might be a skin, or it might be an actual piece of armor where you can select the stats for what you get. And it's actually a very good system. I will say though, it hasn't kept people from moaning about the fact that rewards are lacking, but because this problem, I mean, and they have a shitload of rewards in Guild Wars 2, and people are still not happy with that, because it comes into elsewhere in the actual game mode itself, where actually ESO is very successful, funnily enough. It's one of those things where, if you could combine 3 or 4 games together, you'd get this perfect experience. But no one seems to cotton on to the fact that, taking that idea and making it your own isn't you're not necessarily copying them. You might be, but you can do that. If it's good and it works, just take that idea and adjust it to your style of your game. And I think ESO could do that. But, and again, it comes to rewards, like Ruben said. Incentivizing people to get involved in a heavy way, where they're so focused on trying to get further in the campaign, or further in the leaderboard, or get towards Emperor, or whatever, is really important. Rewards are just very, very key. You want to be rewarded for your time. Okay, the fights are cool and everything else, but rewarded for your time is very, very important, because you do play the game and it is free, and it should be about the enjoyment, obviously. But we still like to have a present at the end, don't we, really? We all like a birthday.
Especially since, like, the 30-day reward, it's a whole 30 days, man. At the end of the month, it's something that you get a maximum of 12 times a year. And that's if you are playing continuously. Something that happens so little should be rewarding in some way.
Yeah.
Because AP itself, we don't have much to buy with AP besides motifs, which we turn into gold after we sell them. And even that's not really anything big. I mean, we buy, 4 camps and siege with AP as well, but that's not going to make us anything but more AP. But,
that's true.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it's kind of the same way with IC. A lot of the PvPers just go in there for the fights. A lot of us don't care for AP gain. There's nothing really to spend AP on. Kind of like what Ruben was saying earlier about the whole, what if I wanted to buy Bonepire? Like, that's just a perfect example of what I was talking about, like in IC as well. Like, I've talked about that before with other people, and like, dude, like, that would be great if I could just buy certain sets with AP. And yeah, you can do that with like the overworld sets, but the dungeon sets is what we're like more trying to talk about. Those we would have to go grind in PvE land. If we could purchase those with AP, that would be fantastic for the PvPers at least. But other than that, it's just like there's no real incentive to get a lot of AP, and you can't really say, oh, well, my AP rank is high. Like, AP rank, it just doesn't mean much anymore. There's there's Grand Overlords that have been that dude light attacking in a Zerg for like a year, and he just got the rank for light attacking with the Zerg. You know what I mean? Like, not saying that Zerging is bad, because Zerging can be organized. Look at the ball groups we have, but what's the actual reward that we're getting besides the fights, if they're even good?
Yeah. Something to think about. You never know. Hopefully, they'll, I'm pretty sure they watch these kind of podcasts, and they do pick up some kind of feelings. Hopefully, there's more about these kind of things than the lag issue that we were talking about earlier, though. You never know. We never know. But this is all interesting stuff for people to know, and it's also important to talk about the things that we do enjoy about the modes as well, because it's definitely, because I don't want it to be like, because normally a podcast, I think it always ends it doesn't always end. I'm not saying we're ending right now, but it will do fairly in the next like 20 minutes or so. But Cyrodiil is a good mode. Like, it is good. Like, it's like the fighting, the sieging, it is very exciting. There are times where I can feel a little bit lost as a newer player to Cyrodiil, that's for sure. But I know that would change obviously if I dedicated more time to it. But it is extremely epic at times. And it's not just those big scale fights, but like last night, like I said, that experience I had specifically was just awesome. It was like, I haven't had that experience in Elder Scrolls Online before. I don't think I've had it in maybe Warhammer Online, which was pretty cool, with that kind of small scale stuff, but that was many different maps and you could just kind of ninja about doing things all the time. I just want to mention that if anyone's listening to this or watching this now on Twitch, like, the reason we talk about these things is because we enjoy them at the end of the day, and you want to see some kind of having player feedback is so important. It's a community, it's an MMORPG. It's about the community and the players that play it. So it's important that, you know, this kind of thing is talked about, obviously in a respectful way, but in a critical way that's useful for people to hear.
Like, exactly. Like, the thing is, a lot of people like sometimes call us like haters or stuff like that. But the thing is, for me personally at least, is the reason why I complain about like servers or let's say Cyrodiil, but also like Computer Europe. It has been like terrible for like 6 or 9 months now with random battlegrounds and dungeon queuers. Is that it just kind of sends me as well how much it hurts the game. Like, I see friends quit. And especially with the golden opportunity ESO itself had, with all the World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth refugees coming in, you know, that the servers aren't working properly. Like, that's, if I would try out a new MMO and I try to do a random dungeon queue, it's not working. After I already left my favorite MMO I've been heavily invested in for 10 years, I'm very, very quickly being sucked back into that MMO, you know?
Yeah.
So it just, like, you know, it kind of saddens me as well to see a game that I like so much, you know, being not improving those kind of aspects. And I'm sure they are aware, and maybe that even fries me more. Like, if they weren't aware, I could think, okay, well, they are not focusing on it.
Yeah.
But I'm like 100% sure they should be aware of it now.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm more like, are they able to even fix it? You know?
Well, that's the thing as well, isn't it? I mean, like I said, I mean, I think this is if we're talking about just like lag as a specific thing as well, because I think that's a major feature of a lot of the complaints. It's something which literally is very difficult for even companies developing just RVR games. I mean, Camelot Unchained is just an RVR game. Crowfall is just an RVR game. You know, Warhammer Online back in the day is pretty much just an RVR game, really. They had questing on the side with like small scale BG combat as well. And these games all had problems, and no doubt they will still have problems in the future. It's just such a difficult thing to solve. And, you know, in the meantime, I think there is other things they could be doing to help in terms of, you know, like with what we've been discussing today, like rewards, like incentives, things like this to get people focused, whether or not it's to split up these things so that lag is less of a thing, but then you kind of go away from the whole large scale fighting, which is what Zele said, which is an important point, what they kind of sold the mode on in the first place. So you can't really take away from that. It doesn't make sense. Okay. I've still got loads of stuff. This always happens. You start talking about something and then you just like realize, oh, I'm only like 2 things down the line and there's like 20 things, and you start to talk and it leads on to something else. All right, so to both of you, if there was one, and again, this might be a negative thing, if there's what do you think is an issue, one major issue? Like I said balance, but it doesn't have to be balance. It can be, because balance doesn't necessarily just have to be skills. It could be design of parts of the map for an alliance, for example, that isn't the same on another part of the map or whatever. What's the one thing that you wish you could change? And I don't mean lag. and not something that was mentioned today, but what is something that you wish you could change that is in the game at the moment, or that you think could be useful for the game at the moment, that could change things a little bit? I know one thing is a bit specific, but is there anything that you can think really far out of the box here as well? Anything?
Get rid of all Khajiits.
Man.
Why?
No, I'm just kidding. I like to say that.
T's gonna come in here with a bunch of people just gonna run you over, man. She'll be in Cyrodiil, mate. She's going to Europe.
I think
Someone has to be the Khajiit hater.
Someone does have to be. That's true.
not necessarily in game wise, but I think they should listen to the more dedicated players than overall numbers on like forums, for example. Because look what happened with this faction lock thing. A lot of people don't like the faction lock. I personally don't like it. It restricted me from playing with more friends because at the end of the day, this is an MMO. This is a video game. I want to play with my friends when I want to. The faction lock really did hurt that. I have a lot of friends that stayed on EP that don't come to DC at all anymore, and people say, just go to the 7-day campaign. 7-day campaign's dead. We're not going to get fights there. Even if we're with our friends, what are we doing together? Sitting at a resource, doing nothing. I wish they would listen to their dedicated players more because they see more crying or QQing, whatever you want to call it, complaining, etc., or just overall topics about just specific things like faction lock. They see or a lot of complaints about one thing, and if they see a lot of it, they'll go through with it. I feel like the company doesn't care for their dedicated players in the long run. They just
is a complaint I hear many times.
Messed up as it sounds, dude.
Yeah,
like,
no. I know it's, and the thing is this is the difficulty behind this, because again, I've had this experience in multiple MMORPGs. The problem is who you listen to, and yeah, you guys obviously have the most experience, absolutely, and you're probably the most knowledgeable, and you could help shape the game obviously in a better way. I have absolutely no doubt in that whatsoever. But then you play devil's advocate again, and you think of the other side, and it's like the masses, the community, and it's like, okay, those guys aren't as experienced, but if they push this and there's so many people, it's overwhelming, and there's almost this pressure that might come from above, and they say, we need you guys to change this specific thing because look at the amount of people that are talking about this, and then look at the amount of people that talk about this, and they won't think, and what you're talking about earlier, quality versus quantity. Quantity is going to win in that regard. It is very difficult, and I feel for the devs who get put in that decision in that place. In all honesty, because I think that's an order more from. It feels like more of an order from above than anything else. And that's not to say, and I'm not insulting anyone. I just think that's just the way it is, So I do feel for them in that respect. I feel like whether or not they're talking to the right people in terms of the people they get into ZOS when that happens, I don't to talk about these things. I don't know whether or not that is what happens as well, because again, I'm not really involved in that process. But I definitely hear what you mean. I hear what you're saying, dude. Absolutely. Because especially if you're an experienced PvPer and you I know this game inside and out in this mode. I play this thing. Like, why won't they listen? It can be very frustrating when you don't get heard. I more than anyone definitely know this because I train as a therapist, and I've always mentioned this. It's about being heard as a player in the community in some kind of way, where I feel like I've either influenced the game in some way or improved it, so my experience can improve as well. I don't know. I understand.
Oh, sorry.
No. I just wanted to say that I definitely understand, but it is very difficult.
With the faction lock, one side, what was really starting to annoy me was that people would go on their old characters when we were returning scrolls. They would pick it up and literally run back to their own faction. But the issue with faction locking is it's just implemented way too late. Because myself, for example, I made 3 EP characters, so I could like, if I want to, I could PvP on the EP side. I made 2 AD old characters, so I could PvP on AD. And now I'm just limited to like 3 or 4 of my 10 characters that I grind and level through all these years. And so the faction lock, like the idea, it's just way too late. If they maybe did it in the beginning of the game, like then I would definitely have made all of my characters DC, because then I would be able to like play them on an active campaign. But with only one active campaign at the moment that is faction locked after the game has already been live for 5 years, with people having old characters and old factions, it's actually a really bad choice.
Ding. That was a message then. Ding. Okay, yeah, cool. Was that you're like, I've made my point, I'm done now, kind of thing, like a judge or something? I don't know. Is that both of you then? Is the faction lock is really that big of a deal?
Okay, let's look back at One Tamriel. I understand a lot of the changes. I understand why some things did happen. But let's look at One Tamriel. What happened with One Tamriel? They allowed friends to play with friends. What did they do with Elsewhere? They took that restriction from the PvPers. When and I guess this is more like personal with me and a bunch of my other friends. When I PvP, kind of like what we said before, or what I said before, that like we're not there for the leaderboards and everything. We're there for the fights. If the fights were better on EP, I would just switch to EP. But there's even times where it's like, I'm faction locked to DC now, where I'm on DC, and like DC took the whole map. I wish I would be able to help the other factions.
Yeah.
Like in any way. You know what I mean? Like if I could have a faction that was like or not really mutual, I guess or not really neutral either. That
like
was
a rogue
just
faction.
that would main
Mercs,
the faction.
Stuff like a mercenary faction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I could stick to the faction that had the lowest pop and that was suffering the most, I would do that. If that would give me the more the better fights for me while also helping the lower pop faction, like that's what I wanted to do before I started to level an AD. Then I heard about the faction lock and completely deleted the character.
Right.
I had a total of 5 EP characters. I've deleted 2 of them because of faction lock, and I have 3 that just sit there that I never play.
All right, because there's no point, because you're not gonna use.
Yeah, the PvP is only really active in one campaign right now, and that's on DC. Not on DC. That's in Cal. The previous was known as Vivek. If the fights on DC are really lackluster for my taste of fights, and we have the whole map, all I do is PvP in the game. I'm just gonna log off the game. I'm not a big BG guy, you know. I'm just gonna go spend my time elsewhere, man. If I was able to go and help EP or AD out, like I would be playing the game more than I already do. But it's because like faction lock really did it affected a lot of the players. We aren't the, I guess you could say, a quantity though, for sure. Like I really understand what you're meaning by like they gotta kind of listen to the numbers more, because honestly at the end of the day, numbers is what gets the job done. Like that's
what earns the money
truth,
as well, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that's what I meant by like numbers. I mean, they get like higher statistics, all of that, and they're making more money if they have a larger fan base, casual or dedicated. It doesn't matter. They're at the end of the day,
base
we're
is
still
always going to be
putting in
higher than the
something
dedicated as well. In all honesty,
always.
In all
So
honesty.
I understand why faction lock became a thing that it actually was implemented.
Yeah. Doesn't mean you can't be pissed off about it.
Numbers wise, it makes sense. Yeah. But like bro, I just want to be able to play with my friends, man, because all I do is PvP. I've done PvE. I've went and nerded out hardcore in some trials. I've done Flawless Conquer probably 60 times. Like I went and did all that, but I was bored of it, so I stuck with PvP forever. And after this faction lock happened, man, like I don't even talk. Like I literally don't even talk to like some of my EP friends on EP anymore, because it went from, hey man, we should PvP sometime, bro. Like let's go hang out. Let's just go chill. It went from that to not talking anymore because it's not possible. It's just
damn. Okay.
Yeah, we'll group up in the 7-day campaign for what? to fight
there's no point.
one player
Mm.
and then just sit there and waste time, man. Like it really it didn't just impact players in general. It impacted people's like relationships with their friends, man. I had my old guild, my old core guild. I ran multiple, by the way. Another whole core left to EP, and I don't even talk to them anymore because of faction lock. I'm in their Discord and I'll say a thing here and there, but what's the point, man?
It's interesting. I mean, and this is what's good to talk about. Like I said, you talk about one thing, it kind of leads to another, because actually I actually kind of really like that idea of having like a mercenary group. It would, how the hell that would work without, implicating something. You don't take rewards or something. Maybe you just do it purely for the fights. Maybe, you get reduced AP or something like that. But I mean, I definitely understand the whole switching sides and everything like that, because, like you say, people kind of doing some awful stuff, which ruins the experience for other people. But and people, that do want to just switch to the team, they want to just be like, oh, they're winning, I'm just going to go join them. And there's reasons, absolutely definite good reasons for and against, but also what gets lost when you do that, like you say. And then having an option to perhaps be like, I can be, if I genuinely want to go and play with these people, or I can genuinely see that, these guys are getting wrecked and will kind of help them. It would be cool if your alliance could somehow contact them, or somehow have some kind of, what's the word? Ceasefire, I guess. Yeah, like, so you cooperate in some kind of way where you can't physically damage specific people on the enemy team, because you're working together to go and get this objective or whatever. I don't know. I think I'm just thinking of ways that could work. It could be fun, I mean, that's what war's about. You hire mercenaries. There might be some there's always some dodginess that goes on, I guess, as well, but I don't know. I think that's quite an interesting idea that could come out of that. Actually, to be fair, what it would be, I have no idea.
I just want to respond real quick to someone in the chat. Like Etop is saying, I understand why people are against faction lock, but the arguments against it feel very much like I don't get to do what I want to do. Etop, I don't want to call you out, but this is the thing. There was a faction lock pretty much until 2016. They made one Tamriel, play how you want, play with who you want. And people wanted to play other factions because one faction was totally dominating. PvP would be incredibly boring. And it's not necessarily something like that. It is that I grind my ass off on all those characters. I find PvE boring. And now all those characters are useless to play really for me. And I can't play again with all the friends I made. I'm being forced to like 70% of my characters are being locked off because there is only one active real campaign that is going on for PvP. And all those characters that I grind on the other factions, I can play those. I like the variety. What if DC is totally dominating the map? I can go to the other faction because I'm faction locked. And if you like to play objective, what some people do like to play, if the whole map is blue, you got nothing to do. What you're going to do is stand in front of the gate. It's one of the most boring things, like gate camping or anything like that. So if PvP is my primarily focus and I can do PvP, well, yeah, of course that sucks, because that's what I play the game for.
Yeah, again, it's different people's goals in the game, and yeah, it is very difficult, because then, like you say, I mean, if it was at the beginning of the game, then you wouldn't have picked those characters. But then again,
it was in the beginning of the game, and that's why my characters in the beginning were DC.
It was in the beginning.
It was much more grind intensity, but my first character was my DC Templar and a DC Sorcerer, because even PvE content was locked up to your own faction. You could go to the other zones, but you had to do Catwall Silver and Gold. That was the only way to gain. And you would not even encounter people from the other faction. So all your friendships were overall on one faction.
Right.
One Tamriel, you actually were able to do also PvE content with other members, but PvP still stayed within that group.
Interesting.
One kind of on the same topic, of course. One thing that I do wish that they did instead of the actual straight hardcore faction lock is if you have players that are switching between factions, don't give them access to the leaderboard. Don't let them get a chance to get amp. Don't let them pick up the weapon, maybe the new artifact that was implemented. Restrict some things, because I honestly was hoping that like I was gonna be able to enter whatever campaign I wanted to, as long as I didn't home a campaign. So like, dude, like just take my rewards of the worthy, take away my end of the campaign rewards.
Because then you can focus.
I'm gonna be able to do what I want, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
But obviously, I don't really think that's ever gonna happen. But I think that would be really ideal, because I honestly speaking, even if they did take away the rewards that we got, a lot of us don't care because the rewards aren't that great. There's just like, we're not losing too much. The end of the campaign rewards, they're just not even that great. If there's something like Master's weapons like we had before, then that would kind of force people to actually faction lock. Like, yo, I want to help DC and I want to get these Master weapons. Like, if people were dropping the chance to get those big rewards just to play with their friends, and let them, like,
I think so.
I just think they should have just locked the leaderboards instead of the actual factions itself.
It's interesting. And Etiop, I completely see your point of view as well. I agree with both of you. I think that's very and this is someone in the chat, if you're listening elsewhere, member of our community, who makes a point again as a newer player as well, which is very important to take on everyone's point of view, new and old, because at the end of the day we all play the game. It is just like, when we kind of discussed that very briefly about just faction swapping because you want to join the winning team or whatever as well, and that's why it's kind of in there. That's one of those reasons. So it's a valid point completely, but I think everyone's points are valid because it will come from different walks of life within the mode or within different goals in the game or whatever. It's like, how do they win? How do they? Because I think there's no pleasing everyone. There is not. There's too many people. There's too many people from too many places around the world. Like, how can you possibly, appease that many people? You're always going to let someone down. And that's when appealing to the masses is the thing. I guess, I don't know.
In terms of picking the winning side, and what Lord Zele said, take away like the rewards, the leaderboards, then you already solved that. And in regards of the game itself, seems to want to people actually pick a side. Totally not. It was one of the main complaints of the game that if you picked a faction, you couldn't play with your friends. That's why, like, 2006, the update literally is one Tamriel. Like, the whole faction thing has already been removed, and they are now bringing it back in such a way it's just bad on their end, to be honest. And if someone doesn't have access to those resources of people, like, personally, I think the people who like used to faction up, they were overall like balancing, because people don't jump to the winning side; they jump to the losing sides. Like the PvPers, they jump to the losing side. They don't jump. If DC is like almost 80% of the map, I don't see anyone jumping into DC and be like, "Hey, let's take the rest." They jump to like the losing EP or AD side, and that way I have actually seen people balance the map out more, and that way it's more enjoyable. Because if you have one faction totally dominating, and that's something we saw like a lot in 2014-15, they would literally have the gates, all the scrolls, Emperor, and you would jump out of your base, and there would be like 10, 20 people there. It was like Sparta 300 with snipes, man. Like literally, you jump down, you see all those snipes coming in, you're dead, you quit the campaign.
Is there anywhere where you can see stats for previous seasons, previous campaigns for like since that time?
I think there used to be. Something in terms of campaign wins. There was something, but I don't know. It was also a really old topic like I think called Tornblade. That was one of the first campaigns. Wabbajack Tornblade. Yeah. Oh, there was old forum topics, but they were fun.
I think I know what kind of fun that would mean. But I mean, it would be interesting to see.
They had like stats. They had like stats in there. For example, AD used 2040. AD won like 10 months in a row. So I was DC, and I was like, I want to win this campaign, man. I want to win this campaign now.
You were trying to take it away from him. So it would be interesting to see where those changes came in and what how close in terms of points score different alliances were, and whether or not it really did affect people taking sides more specifically. And do you know what I mean? Like, it would just be interesting to see. I mean, obviously players coming in and out, people leaving, there's so many factors. Yeah, I mean, it's just like what was the difference in terms of point score for each alliance when it was locked, where you couldn't change alliance?
It wasn't locked though. It was so hard to level a character. So like hitting veteran rank 12 back then, which by the way, once you're level 50, you had veteran rank 12.
Yeah.
I think veteran rank 12 could be like maybe the equivalent of CP 600, 800 maybe even, without training gear or experience potions. And it's per character. It wasn't like once you're at veteran rank, it wouldn't be mean level 50, you veteran rank 12. No, you had to do all the veteran ranks. So it was very grind intensive. And so people would have one or two characters, and because you didn't really talk to the other factions, I guess, I just didn't take the risk of making an EP character. Like I made like level 30s, but I never made max levels because all my friends, PvE, PvP, guildmates, traders, everything was in DC. Mm-hmm. So even though there was no faction locking, there were a couple of people who maybe faction jumped. It was just everyone had their whole social status on one faction.
Right, okay.
And with CP, it's just so easy to make a new character, and that's when faction hopping really became a thing.
Right. Huh. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't actually know that, in all honesty.
Yeah, so there was just no real like incentive to go and play on another faction because of how long it took you to level up a character. That's what he's pretty much just putting together. I had 2 DC at the time, and there was one Templar and it was a DK, and I never even hit like veteran rank 12, but I was grinding on the game so hard, and I didn't even think about making other factions, even though there wasn't like actual faction lock restriction back then. It was just so rough and so time consuming to try to get the max rank and then go use master weapons at VR 14 and all that. Man, it was just, there was no real point. And then the time that you spend on like a DC character leveling, you make DC friends. Why would you go in and try to go level an EP and then not play with your friends, Like that's how it was back then. Now it's a really simple thing. You hit level 50, max level, got all your CP, you're good. But with faction lock, they kind of removed that. But like another thing about faction hopping is that people would get mad that people would switch to the winning faction. Well, the people switch to the winning faction because they want the rewards. Like kind of like what I was saying earlier, if you just lock the leaderboards, so even if they do switch over, they don't get anything for it. Like a lot of people last minute, and I completely understand it. Like, let's say AD was dominating the map 24/7 the whole campaign, but they were DC. What do you see later? You see that same player go to AD from EP or DC because, oh, this faction's winning. Let me get the golden jewelry. Let me get the rewards. And let me just say that I was part of AD last campaign and we won. If you restrict the leaderboards, the only thing they did was play with AD. They didn't necessarily win because they didn't get the rewards. They didn't get the little, like, not really a medal, but they didn't get anything to really showcase for their win. So if you did lock leaderboards, less people would be faction hopping.
Right.
The only thing that people did hate about faction hopping was, like what Ruben said earlier, people grabbing a scroll and running it back to the enemy.
That should just have been like bannable, in my opinion. If you like literally do it like that, maybe.
If you do it straight like that, then honestly, like, person's kind of a butthead. Let's not use some rough language here. I personally don't care for it, but honestly, for other people, I understand it makes people mad.
Yeah.
And it's a really big troll thing. But what I've done with my groups is I would take an enemy scroll and not necessarily run it back to our home keeps right away. We'll stop by other places and try to use the scroll as bait to get more fights. done that many times and farmed so many times with scrolls because people tunnel vision. That's when they tunnel vision the most. It's like, yo, we gotta catch up to the scroll. We gotta get to the scroll.
Yeah.
While they're tunnel vision, they're not thinking. They get killed.
Mm.
Like they just get smacked because we have the scroll, and it's just like they want it that badly where they tunnel vision and they're not paying attention too much. But I do understand. Like I would go into EP territory with a DC scroll, not to give it to EP, but to get fights because we had to make fights.
That's how much you had to do. What you had to do to
That's
make
how.
fights.
That's how.
Okay.
I guess the word. It's not really desperate, but at the same time, yes, because
It
that's
is
the
kind
only
of,
way to make a
yeah. I
fight.
mean, it
And
does
you-
sound that.
and you're getting great AP farm. But I agree with that. But then there's the thing overall. You are the team who's taking the scroll. It's not like you let one whole DC team take the scroll, and the scroll gets dropped, and you quickly reload, pick up the scroll, and just ruin it that way. You know, like scroll farming is totally different because you actually put in the effort to take the scroll. You didn't just lock out and walk the scroll back. You know, like that is a whole different thing. Like totally, yeah.
Okay.
I mean that is like the only issue I personally had with like faction hopping. But then again,
Mhm.
that
There's
is
always-
if someone like
I
walk
mean-
it back on purpose. You know.
Yeah. They
I
sound,
mean,
it
I
sounds
personally
like
didn't care about it anymore the last few years, but
Yeah.
if people like put in like an hour-long fight or 2 hours, like taking the keeps and then get the scroll back, and there's just someone who relogs, picks up the scroll, and walks it back to the base, that's extremely frustrating.
That's where it's messed up. 100%.
I
That's where it
mean,
gets
and
frustrating.
someone mentions it. I'm gonna move the topic on because I think we could probably talk about this for a while again. But someone made a point in chat saying that if they'd done their job, then it kind of almost wouldn't have happened in the first place. That is a very difficult thing to track. I mean, you can track someone's movements and everything like that, but tracking that many people necessarily, and like Zele said, sometimes they would do it to get fights. What happens if you ban someone who is just trying to, essentially trying to instigate something or trying to get fights and stuff like that? It's very difficult thing to track. Like sometimes it might be really, really obvious, and there might be loads of reports, but it's very difficult to track. I don't think this is an easy. I don't think it's a lazy thing because you got to.
Wouldn't you be able to see it in their log, like if someone relogged or anything like that? I don't know.
I mean, how many
I
resources?
kind of agree with that news though. Like I have seen, it was sometimes so obvious though. I've seen being so obviously, like literally people who mained EP the whole time defending the keep, and then they are suddenly on the DC character picking up their EP scroll and they walk back.
I mean, people would be banned for that though, weren't they? Were people just?
No, they were not banned. No, they were just free to go. Like whole zone chat raging, report, and I just saw the guy logging in again the next day.
Right.
So
one thing that I thought, and I thought this forever ago when I did care about stuff like that when I was running Zergs, I think there should be like a scroll pickup like cooldown. Like if you just relogged to another faction to pick up that scroll and take it back to your faction to be like a little sneaky spy or something, make it to where they can't pick it up if they just logged in. If they weren't part of that fight, if they didn't kill people actively during that fight, don't let them pick up the scroll. Don't give them the ability to pick it up.
And you can track the account. I mean, you can just track the account, right? I mean, because
you just see the log and be like, nope.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I thought that would have been neat.
Yeah.
it's actually a decent idea.
Yeah.
Somewhere like that, just in those lines, yeah.
How long would that take to again, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a dev. I don't know how long that kind of stuff takes to implement. I mean, it could be stuff that's under layers and layers and layers of code that could take. I mean, because I know that some systems that are, we might be like, I mean, I know this for a fact in Guild Wars 2, for example. They're trying to put Swiss style tournaments in instead of single elimination. It's been like almost a year because this stuff is so difficult to implement because it's under so many layers of code and stuff, and they've got other resources where they have to put people. But again, it's been a certain amount of time, and maybe it's something. Sometimes at the time you just don't think, this might be worth it long the time down the line. And you have to make those decisions of like this stuff can come in sooner if we dedicate like this amount of people. I can't even imagine how annoying those kind of decisions are to make. And I think as I've got more involved in talking to the developers about their processes, and about, you know, how things work in terms of all the way from the top and marketing and community and numbers all the way down to where a dev is doing the work, there's so much bureaucracy and stuff that you have to go through to maybe and I guarantee you there will be a large portion of people who probably work there who might agree with you, who want to do that work but literally can't. And sometimes that is almost how it goes as well, and it's unfortunately it gets frustrating for everyone, I think, and to a degree. And I'm not putting that, I'm not trying to put the words in the mouths of Zos or anyone here specifically, but you know, I can imagine that might be the kind of case, and it's difficult. I'm going to move on again. Another one. I think we're going to try and actually wrap it up, even though I've got a few bits to talk about still. They're not like things that we can, because otherwise we're going to be going into 3 hours, and this could be the longest one we've had. I mean,
1 hour for each participant.
Maybe, yeah. That's right. Gand's not even here. It's like, Jesus, we managed to go this far. There was some really some stuff, some really, really basic stuff that I wanted to mention that I kind of felt was missing from Cyrodiil. I thought would be very, very good, and I don't even know if this stuff exists because I haven't really had access to it. But stuff for, and it's more of a suggestion / improvements for Cyrodiil, but it was stuff like knowing where your own faction is potentially on the map, and I guess that's one reason that isn't not something that you can see is because of, like, I guess the faction swapping before, because you could probably see where people are. Whether or not it's you know, party leaders maybe, and don't see the numbers, and there's a marker, there's a party here, there's a group here, and whatever, and you can't see the numbers of those people, but indicators. Something a little bit more interactive on the map to make that feel, because when I log in and I go into Cyrodiil and I look at the map, the only indication of where things are going on is a little explosion on a keep, and it's like unless I know that typing LFG is going to get me in a group invite because of the auto invite feature, which is an add-on, you're not really going to know where to go and how to get involved in that kind of thing. So I was thinking, and this was even a long farther stretched idea as just a random idea. There was like if they had like an LFG tool where, you know, you're looking for a group for a dungeon, you're looking for a group for BGs, you get put in there, and whether or not you're in Cyrodiil and you just pop a LFG queue and you get into a group quickly, like you just get people grouped up in some kind of warfare that's specific to them. So you could have, like, you know, Havoc group LFG, large scale warfare LFG, small scale warfare LFG, you know, and people had open groups and you could get assigned to different features within Cyrodiil that you would actually want to play. I mean, I don't know if that's just a stupid idea. I just felt like it was something where you could assign players, because a lot of the time when I'm running around in Cyrodiil, I just see people running around randomly. They just don't, like, almost like they don't know where they're going, or they're always on their way to somewhere, but they're never quite there. I don't know. Is that anything that would be useful? It's just something that I thought about. I don't know.
So the community itself, if people don't know, there is an add-on out there called Auto Invite, by the way, that some people do use to easily get into these groups. So when they type X, it'll kind of like macro the group invite, not necessarily macro as in usability, still to just invite you to the group automatically when you type a specific like coded word or something. So there is stuff like that out there, but I don't know how this worked, but there is, like, isn't there like a Cyrodiil queue, like, finder? Didn't they add something like that in the game and no one just ever used it?
Is there actually one?
There's a grouping tool for Cyrodiil. That's what people don't realize. There's an actual grouping tool for Cyrodiil. I don't remember how it works, but it's in the game. Yeah, it's in the game.
That's how much people /use it.
Yeah, that's how little it works. It's just, I remember when it was introduced and I kind of thought to myself, I was like, yo, this is cool. And you can't necessarily, like, search like guilds and stuff, but you can basically add yourself. I think it was like you add yourself in a queue and they bam, you get applied to some other big group as long as the group lead was participating in it or something. There was something like that.
Yeah, as long as it was an open group or something.
Yeah. it wasn't used. But they
Is
do
it in
have
the
something
game
like that.
still?
hmm It was like you didn't have to download
Really?
anything at all for it. Yeah. And to add on to that, there
Wow.
was
Okay,
auto
it's already in the
invite.
game.
Yeah, there was auto invite ran by groups as well. So with the LFG tool
Yeah.
that the game came with, and then the auto invite, you think that issues like that would be solved, where
Mm.
you know where to go, etc. But the only other way to really determine, and you could always ask zone chat, yo, where the fight is at.
Yeah.
You'd always be like, hey
yeah.
man, where the fights at? Some people will be kind of like, you know, my language, smart ass, and they'll be like, oh, well, look at the map. Sometimes you can't really tell. Like something will be flagged, but you go there, the fight's over
Yeah,
pretty
it's
much.
delayed. Yeah.
There is cross swords on the map.
Mm.
They get bigger depending on how big the fight is.
Mhm.
But even then, if you're like
By the time you get there, like
me,
you say, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
gone. The fight's pretty much over.
Mm.
You can kind of always assume that there's always going to be fights in between two keeps that are different factions, so you just
Yeah.
be in the middle somewhere. But finding fights, it all comes down to not how bad you really want to fight, but it all comes down about using your resources.
Mm.
Asking people in zone chat is literally, it's there available for you. Just ask someone. And just ignore the smart ass people, because I see it all the time. People being like complete, like
I
and
mean,
it's not even
and
them just being trolls. It's them just being
percentage
mean.
of people that talk in the zone chat are
Mhm.
smart asses, I would say,
I'll
including
tell you-
maybe me sometimes. But like, no, actually, no, it's bullshit. I'm pretty good. But, yeah.
I'll tell you this, kind of like on the same topic. My ignore list is 3 people. I've played this game for years. I have like literally like 6,000 hours. That's almost like that's over 200 in-game like playtime days. And who are those people on my ignore list? The people from the same faction as me. Because that's just how toxic and trolly they are to other people. If people don't have anything to really contribute and they're always trolling people, I just put them on ignore.
So you're saying
Don't
this
see
is a
them
good
again.
thing that you've only got 3 people on your ignore list?
I'd say so, because I don't take crap from anyone hate tell wise. When I
Yeah.
get a hate tell, there's days where, you know, I get upset at it, like, oh, you're cheating, which isn't really a thing, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, those I'm just like, I kind of shrug those off. And there's
Let
also
it go.
days where I just kind of troll them, and it's just like, you can tell they're mad, and it's like, dude, like, come in for a bro hug, bro. Like, it's not that serious, man.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I kind of like, I try
do
to like
that.
literally like try to joke around with them, and next thing you know,
Yeah.
I made a friend from the other faction.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, those zone chat trolls, man, like, I have more people on ignore for my own faction than I do other factions.
Interesting.
That's literally it. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. That's actually pretty good. I like it. Okay.
Yes. What you gonna talk about?
There's so many things, but I think I'm gonna have to start wrapping
Yeah,
it up.
it's
You look
been
so
a while.
serious at me, man.
I'm
You
just
were
like,
shut up.
I'm just like, no. I'm looking at the thingamajig. I'm like, I don't know if I should be going on to some of these. And then it's been like 3 hours, and I want you guys to either get sleep or have a Sunday. So that
Already
was.
11 p.m. So
Oh yeah, you're already almost in bed, aren't you? Jesus. For Zele,
No,
for him, it's the daytime.
yeah.
He's probably got sunshine. Okay, I'm just going to wrap it up with one more question. Let's have a look. I think a lot of these we've actually kind of covered, in all honesty. I don't know if I should end with the macros question. Or if
I
it's
can
even-
explain how it's not really beneficial real quick.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
like a
go on.
minute. So from what I've gathered from everybody, and this actually does make sense, and this is why I do agree with it, and this is why I tell people, macroing in ESO PvP specifically does not help you because of global cooldowns.
Okay.
If you have a set rotation, I'm gonna tell you this right now, that set rotation is really limiting your potential. If, let's say, I'm playing a Stamplar and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna press this button and I'm gonna do 3 jabs in a row.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be real. When you're fighting, it's not all just about just attacking. You need to know when to heal. You need to be able to heal on time. All of that depends on reactions. If your opponent starts fighting back, you don't want to get stuck in this little macro and literally be stuck not healing. You see what I'm saying? Like if you're, it all depends on what's going on in the moment. If you have something set up macro wise, dude, like it's gonna screw you over in the long run.
You can't chuck a block
or even,
in. You can't
not
chuck
even
a
in the
dodge
long
in,
run.
or...
It's just gonna mess you up immediately.
Yeah. So macroing is like more, to me, sounds like it's more of a Zergy, like a large scale fight when you want to just get a cheap kill, right?
If
it's cheeky.
If it even works.
Yeah.
Macroing, because of global cooldowns, like I said, it really limits not just a skill, but what the player can do in general. It'll really like it doesn't benefit you.
Right.
It really doesn't. There is no special rotation you do every time repeatedly over and over in Cyrodiil. There's an initial rotation and you should know when to burst, etc. like that. It gets more in depth, but it's all based on reaction. If you're set to do the same thing over and over again, and the enemy you're fighting is, he's not on that same set rotation, your set rotation is not going to help you in every situation at all. So it really limits you, man. You go from like a book that went from speaking multiple languages to just one.
Yeah.
And like, let's say you run into someone that speaks Spanish, for example, it's not going to help you there. If you just stick to just that one thing over and over again, it's not going to help you. So macroing in this game, PvP wise, just doesn't benefit you. And if you get mad at people and it's like, oh, they're macroing, realize that they're probably not, honestly. And don't confuse macroing with animation canceling.
No.
ZOS literally like kind of promoted that for a while, animation canceling, but it doesn't help. Macroing does not help the player.
There you go. Ruben, do you want to add anything?
Well, actually, Lord Zele actually makes a good point there. It actually kind of changed my view on it. Actually, like what he said there.
You thought the other way.
I can totally see where he comes from. I agree with him 100%. So he actually, like, I never thought about it like that way, My thought was just macro bets. Just like that. But that's actually a really good point. I actually really like that. I never thought about it like that way.
It's a good point, because PvP is about reactions. It's about movement. It's about, survivability. And, if you can't chuck a block out, you can't dodge because you're stuck in an animation. If you are stuck literally doing something that, and it's like, before I knew how to cancel animations, I'd be stuck in something for like 2 or 3 seconds and I would die in PvE, let alone that. I need to chuck a block in so I can stop it. What if I'm stuck in a macro that's like 2 or 3 abilities, I can't do shit and I'm dead? And it's like, makes sense. Good, really simple, good explanation. So if you're moaning about it, know that, one, that player isn't probably going to ever improve if they keep doing it. So if you ever meet him in a 1v1 situation or try and get him in that situation, say to him, do you want to duel me, bro? That's probably the only situation where you're going to win. You'll be like, you might be able to win because he'll only be able to play one way. And they won't improve. So even if they do wreck you, the chances are that you're going to surpass their skill level anyway, because you're learning how to adjust to different situations, whether or not it's fights where you're playing outnumbered, whether or not it's Zerg, whether or not it's small scale. They will always play this exact same way no matter what, because they want to just try and do it easy mode, whereas it's not actually that beneficial. Very good point. Easy, not that one on the head. Okay, so tell me, before we end, something that you really enjoy, the one thing that really gets you going, that you really enjoy before we stop the podcast, something that you really love about Cyrodiil, why you are still playing it, why you still enjoy it, because you're both still playing, so you must enjoy it for some reason. As Ruben's shaking his head.
I still I rarely play Cyrodiil actually nowadays, but I can still answer it, of course.
Okay, man. Well, Flipping European.
Just give the guys. I never said that. Like,
I can't edit this, so you did. All right, I'm gonna get. All right, Ruben, you can start. You can tell me. Yeah, addiction. There you go. Can't stop. But even if you think about, when you do go in, what is that reason that you still play it? Why do you like it? What is the enjoyment you do get from it when you get the enjoyment?
well, like it gets really cold here in the winter, so I like to get myself mad, and then I feel warm again. So no, the main reason for me.
No, Ruben, you don't understand how this is supposed to work. You're supposed to say something positive so we can end on a high note. At least we're laughing. Okay. At least we're laughing.
What I really love about Cyrodiil is like the large-scale action warfare you get with it. Like, I personally really enjoy the large-scale action, just as a small-scale action. One moment you can be sieging the keep with 40 faction members. You see like the siege going off, ballistas on all sides, and then you try to maybe run through the gate. Maybe you succeed. Maybe you just get like wrecked with some meteors. But then you can like get through it. You can do some small scale on the walls. Try to pick up the sieges, help your faction that way. But you could also have people who try to burn down your camp in the back, so you defend your camp. So it greatly variates. Like, you don't know what you're running into. One moment you die and you respawn at the outpost, so you travel back, you get ganked. Then you are with 5 versus 5. It's constantly changing, and you just don't know what you're running into. Whereas with Battlegrounds and stuff, you know what's going to happen after the first 2 minutes. Cyrodiil is constantly evolving. Then it's sieging, then you are maybe ganking, then you are defending, then you are attacking, and that's what I absolutely love about Cyrodiil. And just the action around it, you see a fight going on over there, you see siege going over your heads, back and forth, oil being dropped, toxic zone chat, everything makes it complete, man.
It's an experience. There you go.
So, I guess part of my experience is that we know the general idea of what we're expecting in PvP, but yeah, it is mixed up a lot. But what actually keeps me going, and the reason why I do play this game still, is that, just an example, my whole night can be really, really, really shitty PvP. The moment I get that good fight, man, it's a good fight. There's literally been times where I jump out my chair and I'm like, yo, let's go! Like, I get hyped. Yeah. Because the fight was just so good. We just took out this group of like 20 people instantly. Instead of having a long fight, it's just like, bam, clap. And then there's also those great moments like I was watching, he's actually in the chat, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring it up. Pale Orc was streaming the big fights yesterday, and oh my god, I felt like I was watching a movie. There was no lag, and everything looked so smooth, man. Like, it was perfect. I was sitting here, he had the music blasting, and it's just like, yo, like, this is it, man. Like, it's badass, man. And it got me hyped. I was sitting in my chair like, oh my god, bro. I was like, let's go, dude. Like, I was getting hyped just watching his stream. But what keeps me going is those good fights. Yeah. Regardless of the size. If we get a good fight, man, I'm all about trying to get small scale. But yeah, there's times where I run larger groups and we fight other big groups. It's whatever, but the whole night can be like 20 terrible fights in a row. The moment we get one good fight, man, like, my night's complete.
It can just outbalance everything anyway. Yeah. Okay.
It's like all the rage is gone. It's like, guys, that's it, bro. Let's call it there. Let's leave it on a good note. That was badass. Good stuff. And let's just call it a night. It was a good night. Bam.
Good stuff. I like it. And that's what I wanted to do. Ta-da! There is a load more stuff that we could talk about, and there's the rabbit hole of everything that we could go down, but we're not gonna have enough time. Maybe we could do that again in the future. But that's pretty damn good. That was enjoyable. Damn. I can't believe we went on as long as we did. That went quick. That went quick. Jesus. Yeah. That's almost 3 hours. That's the longest podcast we've had, and it's on one mode in the game. Jesus. Okay. Right.
I'm not sure if that is positive for us or not.
Huh?
Either we are like really interesting or we are really long talkers.
No, I was
I'm just kidding.
I'm definitely interested.
I have a lot to say about
I don't
Cyrodiil.
know,
So.
but yeah, well, I mean, if you guys are just playing mainly that most of the time, then I guess you could talk about it for a long time. Either way, we're done. Is there anything you guys want to add? In short, no.
Short.
In short, if there's anything you want to say to people about Cyrodiil specifically.
In short, just a quick tip to players in general. No matter how much you die, just note that it's going to be part of the game. You're going to die over and over and over. But in the long run, just try to still enjoy the game, stick with it, and like eventually your mechanics will come together and you're going to really enjoy the game a lot more. It's just all about sticking and keep going and going. Even if you're taking those L's here and there, it's just part of life. It's part of the game itself.
There's life advice from Zele as well there.
Right?
It
almost sounds like my love story. You're gonna die and die again inside, but just keep trying.
Wow.
Just keep trucking, bro.
He's not
Don't
wrong.
let hate tellers get to you either. There you go.
And Ruben, do you want to add anything?
No, I actually really enjoyed it. Like, I really did enjoy the podcast. Like Lord Zele with, for example, with the macros, like some things I was like, oh wait, actually you're right with that, or that's a good point. So that was actually really nice. I really enjoyed it, and just talking with you guys was really chill, relaxed. So really enjoyed the podcast. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no worries. Both
Yeah, it was great, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun times.
It's nice.
And where can we find you, Zele? Where can we find you on Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube?
Everything is Lord_Zele, except for on Twitter. Twitter, it's Lord_Zele PvP, because if you go to just Lord_Zele, it's like this. Someone else took the account, and it's like a spam account, so just ignore that one. Just go to Lord_Zele PvP.
It's not you. It's not actually you.
Yeah. But on YouTube, just type in Lord Zele, maybe ESO. I do have like a decent following on YouTube now. I'm a YouTube partner. I went and grinded my butt off with a bunch of Stamplar videos. But you can find me on YouTube. Just look up Lord Zele. And Twitch, obviously, Lord_Zele. It's all pretty much the same everywhere.
Nice. So how you doing?
I gotta say, the Lord Zele Twitter is pretty cool. I just looked it up. Yeah. My Twitch is twitch.tv RubenSky, whatever you want to call it, as long as you know how to type it. That's the most important part. And Twitter is @RubenSky_Twitch. Because RubenSky was taken as well. I have no idea how that one actually looks.
Okay. There you go. Awesome stuff. So go and follow these guys. And also my stuff is all below the stream. But if you are listening to this everywhere, it's @JebroUnity on Twitter. It's twitch.tv/JebroUnity as well. This podcast happens every 2 weeks. It's not specific on what we cover. It just covers Elder Scrolls Online. I enjoy the game. I like talking about the game. I like talking to people who are dedicated to their mode or to their faction or to their style of play, and that's what we want to do. We want to try and capture that enthusiasm and that joy for it, whether or not they're happy or they're sad or they're in between. It doesn't matter. It's always good to get different opinions, and that's what I like to do. I like to talk to people. So our community knows that as well anyway. But yeah, otherwise that is the end of the podcast this week. We'll be back in about 2 weeks, where I think we'll be talking about the Necromancer, as it will be out on all of the things, all of the consoles and PC for about 2 weeks. And I think by that time, people will start to gauge fully the class and its potential, and what's strong, what's weak. Maybe there's some fixes will come in by that time. We will have to wait and see. But you have to be careful with an expansion in any game. The new thing is always very, very powerful because you have to sell it. That's kind of almost the way it works, but that's another podcast for another day. Absolutely. I mean, that one could be a long one. But yeah, otherwise, thank you guys again for joining me.